All right. That seems to be working now. And okay, there he is, Smith. Sorry about that, folks. Trying to multitask. That's why I got Smith here tonight. And he was in a stream with me last night. Welcome, folks, on YouTube. We're on Spaces as well. Smith was on a space with me last night, and we had a blast. We went 4 hours, and it was an absolute and it was his words were it was an absolute banger. And I was like, I like a guy who says that because that's what I say. Smith, how you doing, brother?
Music guy, that's why. Bangers, you guys, get on the mic. Devil's in the details. We got Curtis Stone up here. Yeah, that's the thing I said last time. Like, you guys need to raise your hands because I'll fire questions at this guy all night. What's going on here? Yeah,
What's going on?
We did, man. We had a ball.
We did.
Really, like I said, try to respect your time at the same time, you guys. I was trying to keep them there a little bit, you know.
Oh, dude, it was a blast. So, hey, man, I want to know a little bit more about you. Do you live in Montreal now or just in Quebec?
So I live half the year in Canada, and up until last year, for 5 years solid, I was in Montreal. So because I was getting my permanent residency, originally from Michigan. Pretty much my life story is I came from Flint, Michigan. Grew up there. It's like a factory town, but my family weren't in the factories though. Family business. And I went there for 6 years, airport manager. And after I got out, I met Jacques Fresco, as you mentioned.
Yeah, Jacques Fresco. Yeah, we got to talk about him.
Yeah, I spent 8 hours with him. 2 different days I went and just picked his brain and stuff. He was like 95 at the time. Rest in peace. And from there, pretty much, I was going to go back to school as Rutgers to study sociology and become a coach, like basically someone who could teach other people how to interact, okay, with the other people.
Right.
It's a skill set. So anyway, at the last minute, I Googled sustainable living degree, and I found the first link was Maharishi University in Iowa. I'm like, what the hell is a Maharishi? But I knew I remembered, right, the Beatles and all that. And but they had the first sustainable living program in the United States, and it differed from, let's say, environmental science, where it's like more hands-on. I was originally, like I mentioned, more like what you were doing on the building track, like into structures. At least that's the vibe I got from you. And anyway, I switched off, started the Flintopia, which is the Flint Project. Went for 5 years, sold all that, and then it's the Hobo Railroad thing. That's purple people on the Hobo Railroad. So I go to different communities and stay at them, and either consult or just pay to stay because I love community. I love promoting that lifestyle and creating a network that already exists. Most people aren't aware of.
That's right.
If you use helpx.net, Workaway to Info, Wolf, IC.org, and Couchsurfing, you have yourself a ready to go network. And you learn more from my experience learning at those places, like if for kids, that's what I'm thinking of.
Totally.
Than you would in any school. So other than that, basically I went back to school again here for sculpture. That's my permasculptures. I'm in Mike Hoke's book for that. That's like my claim to fame for permaculture. And then just a little thing. And I'm a clown, silly Uncle Bud. So that's one of my jobs here. I was the clown of Andre Broussard. I don't know if you know Michel Tremblay and Belle Sur and all that.
I don't think so.
During this revolution they had, the Cultural Revolution here.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
And they started doing theater in Quebec.
Yes.
Quebecois,
okay. Right on.
So, the director of that was Andre Broussard. So I ended up being his clown until his death for 2 years. And before that, from Tom Foote, who had his own TV show, he was the creative director of our nonprofit during the Flint days. But I clown. That's the big thing. I mean, if anyone wants to check it out, it's on Gig Salad. You can see my reviews, Silly Uncle Bud. So I go down to Honduras. That's where I'm flying out to. I got to go to DC here, visit some purple people, see my grandma. She's still alive, and get to Honduras. And there's a community there. Doing a permaculture course, and I clown at the schools and stuff. So that's pretty
nice.
Cool.
That's awesome, dude. Hey, what's your X handle?
Jimmy Leaf Tender.
Okay, so folks following on YouTube, if you want to follow Smith, he's going to be kind of chiming in and out. And when we get to the segment where we're going to start bringing people in, he's going to help moderate that. And that's going to be awesome. So, hey, I'm just going to kind of reintroduce everything now that everything's rolling smooth. I got Smith here. So, hey, folks, tonight's stream is I always kind of decide near the end, or right before it happens, what it's going to be. And it's kind of this train of thought I was on the other day. I tweeted, the devil's in the details, but God is in the fundamentals. And it's a trip that I've been kind of thinking on a lot. And I thought it'd be kind of interesting to share because I think it puts a lot of things into perspective when you can boil things down into simple principles of really what's going on. And tonight we're going to riff on that a bit. And then, yeah, so this is kind of cool, folks. So people are watching on YouTube, smash the like. Folks on X and Twitter, please share the stream. Go down to that bottom button. Tell folks on X what to do there, Smith, how to share this.
Let's go. It's 2111 New York time. Repost the space. If you go down to the bottom right, the purple pill, that's the chat bubble, the shovel. You can go down there and you can, for example, I'm going to go right now. I'm going to see if we got 6 reposts, 6 likes, and 3 bookmarks already. That's pretty doggone good. And you can use that to repost, and you can also quote it, which is always better. Say what's going on, how you feel, invite people out to the space. Also, you can send direct with the arrow on the right. You can send direct DMs for the space as well. So fire away, invite some friends, and we're going to kick it off here and have a good time. We got a lot of folks in the space. Things, find your tribe, share goodness vibrations. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Smith. So people keep coming in on YouTube. So this is interesting about doing a Twitter space and a stream at the same time. Is I've really been thinking about this a lot lately about how Twitter or X has become this very unique new platform that hasn't existed much in social media prior to now, because it's completely different than what it was when it was just Twitter. And the thing that I find interesting about the spaces is that it's almost, if when you compare it to YouTube, it's almost a juxtaposition in some ways. In that YouTube, it's a bit more quantity, and on Spaces, it's a bit more quality. In the sense that YouTube has the ability to just get to more people, and it's a little bit less personal the way it's set up because there's a chat, and I can see that. But then on Spaces, it's more personal. I can see everybody's icon there. People can request to speak. You can come in. So there's less people in there, but the quality is quite remarkable. And I have to say, every single space I've done, everybody who calls in has got something interesting to say. Rarely am I rolling my eyes getting bored with somebody. People are really, there's quality people in this platform, and it's really fascinating, and it's exciting, and it's an opportunity for a lot of people to connect, but also connect in the flesh, connect in the real world. That's more important than ever as we get to this new paradigm that we're continuously moving towards, right? This is just what we're having now is what we've had for years, visibly. You know, if you're a truther that goes as far back as, say, 9/11 was your waking up moment, you've seen this gradual growth of that. And folks, if you're wondering what those noises are, that's Smith. He's got a soundboard where he can make some sound effects like an audience cheer and pings and horns and whatnot. But when you've seen this, oh, Smith, he's in. Okay, so Smith, I'm gonna make you're in the stream here. I'm gonna make you a moderator. Boom. So we're both double stacking here, brother.
Let's go.
Let's go, buddy. There he is. Now Smith and I are co-mingling here. We're going into two. We're doing two things at once. There we go. Boom. So now we're connected all there. So anyways, where was I going with all this? That what we're seeing is just a lot of the same stuff over and over again. And something that keeps me not fearful about it is that there's really one thing that's really, really important, is that the New World Order constantly always tells you what they're going to do, what they're going to do next. And I'm going to turn this light down. And I've never, ever really not seen that. It's pretty much the same all the time. The New World Order always tell you. When it came to COVID, they told you in Event 201, there was the lockstep document that came out, the solutions and sustainability. It's a big document, Rockefeller, UN, all that. usual suspects, Bill Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They put these things out. Agenda 21, the Rewilding Project. They put these things out, and it's full disclosure. And you can philosophize on why they do that until you're blue in the face. And I certainly have. I certainly have. Um, but at the end of the day, what seems to be happening is they're giving you a form of notice. And there is a concept of public notice. Sometimes when like homes are put up on civil forfeiture, before they notice the party, they'll send a blurb in the newspaper. So this is common practice in law, putting somebody on notice. If there's an arrest warrant for somebody, people put notice out into the public. It seems to me that really the reason that they tell us what's going on is they have to be in a good standing, if you will. They have to give you notice. So if you were dumb enough to take the shot or do whatever the thing is that they asked you to do, they gave you notice. And so you are in full compliance, or you tacitly agreed, basically. And this is the game. That's the game over and over again, getting you to tacitly agree. But when people kind of go down a rabbit hole of, oh, when's it going to happen? When's it going to pop off and all that? It's if you really think about it, there's not really an incentive for them to pop it off in the sense of, say, immediately it's the zombie apocalypse movie, or it's Mad Max World, or it's an EMP and it's Mad Max World. Whatever, you can find sort of extreme scenarios, okay, what it could be. There's just very little incentive for them to do it, in my opinion. And by them, I just mean the controlling establishment who control the financial systems and the governments and everything else. If they pop it off, they really potentially risk losing control. And because so much of the technology, for example, in the case of an EMP, say, knock out all the power grids, all the electromagnetic frequencies, all the cell towers, everything, knock it all out, no internet. That's their control grid. When you look at the amount of propaganda, gaslighting on a daily basis from the mainstream media, that's all a result of the infrastructure that's used to control us through narratives. So I don't really think they're going to pop it off in that way. And that I don't know. I kind of wanted to share that just because it's something that I think about, and I see it in comments and videos I make and whatnot. People always say that, oh, it's gonna, or they're gonna, they say, oh, they're gonna come for you eventually, Curtis. They're gonna. I gotta drink a lot when I talk, guys, because my voice gets so hoarse. Which means I have to go take whizzes every now and then, and maybe we'll play some music in between or something. Nice one, Smith. Nice one, Smith. So yeah, the devil's in the details. And this is a thing, excuse me, you've heard that before, right? You've heard the devil's in the details. It's a cliche. And been thinking on that a lot lately, because it really is, when you think about, say you're in a contract with somebody and maybe it's a mergers acquisitions deal. It's two companies coming together, amalgamating. It's two partners coming together. It's two or more parties coming together with assets and collateral into some kind of arrangement. There's a big contract involved. Okay. And there's a lot of words in there. And most people assume you need to have lawyers to read these things. You don't. But if you feel, if that's what you want to do, then all the power to you, but you don't have to. And it's not as complicated as it looks. But when you get in there and you start looking, you always find the devil is in the details. And what that means is that the details are hard to find, and most people don't see them. And that is a way, the devil's trick is that it was all obfuscation. So it's not so much that he committed something, a direct crime, say, but he committed the thing, but he sort of absolved himself of liability by giving you notice and doing it through obfuscation of the law. And you come to this sort of idea of within the law, there's a foundation of law. And I've often talked about where imagine you're holding a Bible and that Bible represents the law. It's the word of God. And you hear this term from the Bar Association, the association that is practices law. All the judges, all the lawyers are all part of. They say their slogan is, "We practice color of law." Right? So color of law. What's there's law, and then there's color of law. So there becomes this dichotomy of a doppelganger, if you will. There's the Bible, which let's call it, it's the law, it's the word of God. And then there's this other thing, which is complicated. So the Bible is foundational. Okay. The Bible is the foundational thing. Truth. It's simple as well. And then you have the details, the legal system, the technicalities. So you have principles and technicalities, foundational things and technicalities. And so you get to this is where the trickery is. And a good friend of mine in the area here who is a really smart dude, made a lot of money on crypto, older guy, probably almost 20 years, 20 years older than me. But he's got a really cool story about how he kind of got red pilled. And I'll share it a little bit. I told this last night in the space there with Johnny and Smith there. But the you know what? Actually, I gotta before I continue this story, Smith, would you mind chiming in for a second and pumping the space? I'm gonna go and check my doors closed. I think it's flapping around, and I'll be right back.
It's popping off. Repost the space at 2122 New York City time, -5 UTC around the world listening. We got Smart Like Truck in the space. Appreciate you. Abby 377. I don't share personal information with strangers, says Abby. Morgan Holbrook. Stump Farmer. You're in the right place. Jazz Braggs as well. Thanks for tagging along. Camp Creek Hill. At Spiny Stalkers in space. Let's check in with Watch Tech. How you doing?
Hey, it's Wojtek. Hey, I just want to go back to something you said in the beginning of the space about Jacques Fresco. He was a very interesting individual.
He was.
I've been watching his stuff for many, many years, and because I drive a truck over the road all over the country, I wanted to always go and see him. But life always got in the way, and that's one of my biggest regrets is not making the time, because I always thought, oh, I'll do it later, next month, whatever. And unfortunately, he passed away. He was very old. But I definitely wanted to meet him and just talk to him and just look at everything he's built there in Florida. So I guess the lesson is don't take anything for granted and don't put things that you want to do off to tomorrow, because tomorrow you may not be able to do those things. So but he is one of those individuals that I studied, and my interest in architecture, which I'm not an architect, I'm just a dumb truck driver. But I do have an interest in architecture and designing things. And he was very instrumental in sparking that interest for myself many years ago. I also want to get your thoughts, Curtis, on a guy named Dr. Erwin Toma. He's a Australian guy, I think, and he wrote a couple books about harvesting wood. When is the best time?
Yes, I know about this stuff, and at certain times, and you can harvest it at certain moon cycles, and the wood, yet where it like lasts forever, it becomes super. Yeah, is that what you're talking about?
Exactly.
Yeah, dude, that stuff is.
Unfortunately, and I'm not sure why, not many of his books are in English. I have several of them, and I think only one or two. It's called The Secret Language of Trees, and there's a couple other ones I don't remember off the top of my head. And it's nothing he invented. He just
He just figured it out.
Yeah, he has a company that creates, harvests wood and creates these kits to build a home, a cabin, basically not utilizing any hardware, just all wood construction and wood pegs and walls that are the wood is overlaid in different ways. Very interesting stuff. And he goes into benefits of living in a wood structure without any electricity. I think there's no electricity, but there's no hardware, there's no nails, there's no, it's all almost like Japanese carpentry where it's all just wood.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Dude, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Longevity of the building itself, how what health benefits, and he goes into different frequencies and all that stuff.
Dude.
Very interesting. I do recommend.
Back to the stream, right?
Yeah, right on, brother. Thanks for that, and thanks Smith for stepping in there. That even that stuff there comes back into where I was going with this whole thing, going under the devil's in the details. God is in the fundamentals. I was telling the story of my friend, and I kind of got on a tangent, but I want to go back to the story. And what he discovered is that there was this trade-off between principles, fundamentals, and technicalities. And that's how he got red pilled. So this guy was a high-level accountant, auditor for big corporations, and oversaw massive amounts of money, billions of dollars. And he came from an old school accounting where it's just all based on fundamentals and accounting and how things are done and how this P&L goes together. And I won't bore you with all that stuff. I'm not much of an accountant myself, but I think I get the principles. I use spreadsheets. I get it. He says that in the time around 2006, 7, 8, he just saw so much corporate intentional negligence, if you will, where a lot of accountants just were starting to create technicalities on ways to game the system, if you will. And it said he just started to observe that this is how everything is. This is how all banking is done. It's all technicalities. And it's this massive game of obfuscation. And that's sort of this dichotomy of these two principles, is that in the truth, in God's law, which we can all understand very easily, and we intuitively understand it as well, this is really all we need. But then the New World Order, the Anglo-American establishment have created, and this comes out of the Roman Empire too, the Roman civil law system through the Vatican, through the City of London, has created this commercial system that is the details, the devil's in the details. And everything is overly complicated. Everything is confusing, and you're inundated with a mountain of paperwork that you'll never really want to look at. Though what I would tell you is that it's actually not that intimidating, and you shouldn't be intimidated by it. And it's not as big as you think it is once you understand fundamentals. That's what's so cool about this. It's what kind of gives me optimism thinking about where we're moving into this new paradigm. How are we going to build new societies? How are we going to formulate our culture in a way that's still what we would call civil, but perhaps without the civil system of the state? Because if you look at the big agendas, particularly the Agenda 21 and 2030, what they want is everybody living in mega cities. And in North America, there would be something like, I think it's 10 mega cities where everybody lives. And then everything outside of that is no man's land, is the savage lands.
And everything costs a nickel.
Or a wheelbarrow full of cash, depending on where you are in the timeline. Right? But that's what it is, we're going to have to figure out how to manage ourselves. And I'm optimistic that they're going to leave us alone. And the main reason I believe that is that I fundamentally believe, because I can observe that they always tell us what they're going to do. They always do. Everything that's happening now, you go back 5-10 years, there's a Council on Foreign Relations document or something like that that said what this was going to happen. And I can't find a document that says what they're going to do with the dissidents. What are they going to do with the people who don't go along and live in the country? Specifically, what are they going to do with them? because they talk about what they're going to do with all kinds of other people. They talk about if don't use, and we saw this in the propaganda from different countries during COVID. If you didn't go along, these were the repercussions. And they're always going to show you these things, and they do always show you these things. But I haven't found anywhere where they say what they're going to do with people in the country. I have found in UN Agenda 20 in the Agenda 21 where they talk about leveraging resources to certain areas to incentivize people out of them. So case in point, you could see that happening all over rural areas. I still encourage people to live to rural areas, but it means you got to take responsibility. So what we're seeing in rural areas is reduction in services, snow services particularly, and just lazy contracting with it at best, or at work, at best, I would say. One thing I'm seeing in my area is intentional deconstruction of forestry access roads. So there's government contractors that are going around with kind of highway worthy backhoes, and they're driving into the bush roads, and they're pulling out culverts at switchbacks on roads. And why would they do that? It seems like complete sabotage on the infrastructure of a country, but they're doing that. Why would they do that? Right? So they're disincentivizing us out, or trying to. And so as we move into this next quarter, I think we're really going to start to see real estate devaluation. I'm starting to see things slide or just sit. But the thing that might pop it off is the Canadian real estate thing, because all these hedge funds, all these derivatives, all this stuff is all connected. Just like we saw in 2008, Lehman Brothers popping off in the UK had a cascading effect on everything else in the United States. And so it could be a similar thing, but we might be in this sort of perfect storm where, excuse me, where devaluations start happening, which opens up opportunities to get out there. At the same time, reduction in services, controlled brownouts and things like that, which, a lot of people in Texas say. I've never lived through one or could attest to one being controlled ever, but there's a lot of suspicion about what happened in Texas a couple of years ago there. And it makes sense. Even politically, it made sense. Let's throttle Texas. They're the ones that want to secede. Texas is the don't mess with Texas, right? So yeah, what are you saying, Smith? Should we does somebody want to pop in?
Yeah, we got some hands up. A couple hands up. Truth Farmer, you got a question for Curtis Stone? Let's fire away.
Yeah. How's it going, guys?
Great, brother. How are you?
Windstorm here in PEI today, so the whole community was shut down at noon hour, and now it was freezing cold and snowing, and now it's like +3 and raining.
Oh, gross.
Gross. So it's the kind of weather farmers hate, mud.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting, Curtis, on the how do you depopulate rural Canada. Are we seeing that depopulation with farm size and land valuations? I mean, I had a farm I bought 15 years ago. I sold it 5 years later for 200,000 more than I paid for it. Bought it for 200,000, sold it for 400,000. Didn't do anything to it, just farmed it. And that same farm 10 years later sold last month for $1.4 million, and they've done nothing to it since.
What a joke.
$1,000 a year. And, the only real growth we see in the rural country is coming from the Amish and the Mennonites, right? They double in population.
They're crushing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, the average person is not, who can afford to buy in rural Ontario, who can afford to buy that $1.4 million farm and then build a house on it yet?
Yeah, forget about it.
That is not going to a young couple starting out. That's an existing farm operation that's gobbling that up, right?
That's right. And it's getting more and more corporate.
Yeah.
What it is here in BC is East Indian families actually just aggressive buying land. And I mean, you got to hand it to them, right? I mean, they came here and crushed. So all the power to them. I'm not particularly a fan of their farming practices most of the time, but you know, it's a similar idea. And it's basically that farmland is getting in the hands of less and less people, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're getting at, right?
Still better though to repopulate.
Oh shit. I can't answer that phone call. Are you kidding me? Sorry, dude.
Double in population every 20 years. You know, that's one way to keep rural Canada, rural US alive. But it's unfortunate that those are going to be some of the only people and corporate farms that are going to be left in rural Canada in the next, 50 years.
Yes, but I think that's where we're coming into an opportunity moment, especially in Canada, because I've talked about this a lot lately, but it's worth reiterating that when these real estate renewals come up, there's a lot coming up this year because from 2019, 2020, 2021, interest rates in Canada in real estate bottomed in general across the board, and valuations were at their highest as well. So we're 5 years from that 2019 now. So my prediction is that for the next 3 years, basically starting now, the conditions are going to get worse and worse in the valuations, and there's going to be more on the market. And we'll probably see banks make aggressive moves to gobble up real estate for cheap as well. But we could be coming into an opportunity, and if people are prepared for to make a move and have their ducks in a row, you could come out smiling.
On Facebook, he's the largest landowner in Canada. I've talked to him different times. He's an approachable guy, just a regular Joe. But he started in commercial real estate in Western Canada, buying like rundown downtown Calgary type buildings, fixing them up and flipping them. He is now the largest landowner in all of Canada and doesn't farm a single acre of it. Rents it all out to farmers. Like, just crazy,
It is. It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah, brother. Anyways, I appreciate your thoughts on that. Let's we got anybody else with their hand up there, Smith?
Yeah, Cowboy, go for
Oh,
it.
Cowboy brother.
Hey, good evening, y'all.
Hey, brother, speak closer to your mic.
Yeah, kind of garbled, kind of sound far away there, Cowboy.
Is that better?
Yep.
Much better. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, first off, good evening, y'all. Thanks for holding the space, Curtis. So Truth touched on a little bit of what I wanted to say. I find it interesting, your view on that, Curtis, because I've also well, first of all, driving these people to the cities, it's easier to control people, right?
Yep.
If you've ever farmed, if you've ever had livestock, there's a reason why people put fences up, right?
That's right.
There's a reason why you have, dogs in with your livestock, that don't let them stray off. It's just easier to control groups of things, groups of living beings.
That's right. It's farming.
When they're herded together, yeah. And just with what Drew said, here I'm in middle Georgia, and I'm from South Georgia. And I'm 46 years old, and, fortunately, I've got a small farm for my area. I've got 80 acres. I know to some people that sounds like a lot of land, but around here, that's on the smaller side. And I was, fortunate that I saved up. I had planned for this, and I bought my land several years ago. But like what Truth said, I don't know how, anyone that wants to get into, medium to large scale, individual farming can afford to do it around here. Land's just gotten too expensive. And I've always felt like that was on purpose, right?
Of course. Absolutely.
And then, the cost of everything, right? Like the cost of vehicles has gotten insane.
It's all insane.
Not coincidentally, it encourages people to move into the city so they can take public transportation, right?
Yep.
The cost of food's gotten so expensive. Hell, fence post.
Everything did.
I was at the farm supply store today, and fence posts are, almost like 17 or 18 bucks a piece for a 4 or 5 pressure treated fence posts. So, I think the cost of everything, it's not accidental. Like it's
Oh,
being done
dude, no,
for-
I 100% agree. Let me speak to that. And let me kind of make my case a bit more of where I'm coming from with how land is going to get cheap. There's two things happening, and one is a bit more of a thing that's happening more immediately. And then there's another factor that's happening, and I'm talking specifically in the area of land, of raw land, farmland, rural land, the kind of land that I talk about in my homestead accelerator that I promote and encourage people to move to. Is there's two things happening. One is the expense of maintaining it and the expense of developing it, as you talked about, right? Talked about the cost of things, fence posts, lumber, everything. The only building material that I found, and I've been in construction for 3 years now up here, the only building material I found that hasn't significantly increased in cost is concrete. That's why I've done a lot of concrete up here. So things are getting more expensive. And as I said, this phenomenon in Canada, which also exists in Australia, this 5-year mortgage cycle renewal period, where you sign up for a 30-year mortgage, but every 5 years, the interest rate is updated to whatever the new interest rate is. So in 2019 through 2021, people bought into mortgages at as low as 1.4%, and their mortgage on a $1.5 million house is about $4,000, $3,000, $4,000. Now, as they go to renew, starting now between the next now and 3 years on, they're going to be going in at 6.7 or 7%, right? That is triple the amount of your mortgage payment because of the difference in interest. And people are going to get absolutely hosed. So that's happening. But at the same time, another phenomenon that's happening. I actually wrote about this in my book in 2016, The Urban Farmer. And this is a thing that I learned from Joel Salatin, who's a bit of a mentor to me. And I, just learned so much from him. Is that we're going through the biggest land transformation of title, in that the average age of a farmer is about 60 years old, and they're getting to the point where they can't run the farms anymore, and their kids don't want to take the farms over. So the farms are going up for sale. And that, if that times in and overlaps with where that starts to be more noticeable, that that's happening, as maybe a bunch of guys took the shot, and 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 maybe a bunch of people are going to start popping off, and things are going to start coming on the market at the same time. Things are also ridiculously expensive. And then in a place like Canada, where all of a sudden people just foreclose, boom, 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 boom. And we're seeing more and more and more and more of it. People that I know, I'm hearing this all the time. So it could be an opportunity at the same time. So, but it's not a thing that's just going to happen overnight. But we're going to start to see more and more of it, because we are. It's a trend. And I'm seeing, because I look at real estate all the time across the US and Canada. And there's a lot of places that are sitting on the market too. The market's cooling off, and people are starting to slide on their price. So what have we got? Anybody else got a request? Who else wants to chime in here, Smith? Have we got any more hands? Anybody new coming in? Cowboy coming back.
Yeah, one more thing to add to that, to your point, Curtis, about the older farmers, are dying off or getting to the point where they're ready to retire. Their kids don't want it, right?
That's right.
Because we've preached for 25, 30 years, 40 years now. You got to go to college to have any kind of job, to make any kind of money. You have to go to college. So these farmers, have paid their way for kids to go to college, and now their kids are accountants and doctors and lawyers and MBAs, and they don't want to farm. That is an opportunity because a lot of farmers, I believe, don't want to sell their land to watch it turn into a subdivision. I think if you are a younger person, or, heck, regardless of age, really, and you want to get into farming, I think a lot of us on here would probably agree that we aren't big fans of banks. There may be opportunity to go direct to these farmers and talk to them about owner financing.
Absolutely. That's a great solution.
I think a lot of people would be open to that idea, so their legacy continues on, even if it isn't through their kids.
That's right.
I think that's a great opportunity for folks.
Hey, Cowboy, why don't you break down how they're doing? Give us an example of how they're doing owner financing in where you're at right now that you've heard of. Talk through a deal. Tell us what an owner finance deal looks like.
Yeah, usually it's set up on and this is the case with any kind of land financing. You don't go get a 30-year mortgage on land per se. A lot of times what a farmer would want to do, they've got their house. They survey that off, right? They break that into a separate parcel if it isn't already. So they might do like a 30-year payment on a 10-year balloon note, right? So let's say you're buying a piece of property for $300,000 for, I don't know, for sake of argument, let's say it's 60 acres. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever that would amortize out to be over a 30-year period, that's what your payment would be monthly. But if by that 120th month mark, if you haven't paid it off already through them, you would have to
take on a new creditor or whatever.
Yeah. To either go to the bank and borrow the money to pay the rest of it off.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they want to leave something to their kids. So that cash was nice.
That's right.
But it's a hell of an opportunity. And I think a lot of older farmers are open, to doing something like that. Yeah,
man. Thanks for that. I totally agree. And what, I'm often thinking about what young men should do right now, because I get a lot of young guys that are in their 20s listening to these streams. We got 386 people on the stream too. Smash the like, folks. And we've got, what have we got here in the space, Smith?
Yo, it's popping up here 2148. New York City time. We got some new speakers into space. Camp Creek Hill and Stephen Galothier in the space. Truth Farmer has another question. Throw a hand up if you got a question for Curtis. Fire away, Truth Farmer.
Yeah, really good conversation, guys. I know back in 2000, I started really ramping up my acres. I graduated out of school. I'm the same age as Curtis there, and it was at a time we had the BSC issue here in Canada creeping up shortly after. A lot of farmers exited the cattle industry then.
Right.
I had people offering me farmland to rent, like neighbors and elderly people who were like, I just want you to plow my driveway for the winter time so I can stay living on the farm, and that's the rent money,
Exactly.
So that was great. And what happened is those people had zero interest in money, they weren't interested in money. And then as soon as those people go to the seniors home, the kids can't wait to get a for sale sign on that farm quick enough, because all of a sudden they're all off the farm, they're all in city jobs somewhere. And when they find out the farm's worth $2 million, what's the sense of holding on to this? Let's cash her in and get the cash, And so that was an issue we ran up against. And so I left Ontario in 2015 because I just got fed up of trying to compete with bigger and bigger farmers all the time. I was up to 2,000 acres of cropland, all certified organic and non-GMO cropping. And it just, it's frustrating when you get a piece of ground cleaned up and then somebody comes along and offers more money for it now that it's cleaned up. And you're the guy that put the sweat equity in to get it cleaned up, And then the landowner says, well, yeah, if somebody's offering me $300 an acre, what are you going to pay now? And it's like, yeah, well, they're only offering $300 an acre because we spent all this work cleaning it up. So it's really important. I guess what I want to say is that if you're getting into these deals, rentals or whatever, like you really got to get stuff on paper and written down to protect yourself, because we had some deals where we got screwed over on, where we, put some culverts in, cleaned out some fence rows, different things for equipment to fit through, and you spend some money, and like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, and then all of a sudden the next year they're renting it to somebody else because they're going to pay more money now, because their big equipment can fit in those gateways that they couldn't fit in before at the road and stuff,
Yeah.
So I guess my question, Curtis, is, what maybe people need to look what your thoughts are. Like I seen something the other day where they said like Vermont has the oldest rural population in the U.S. And so, maybe there are states, maybe people need to look at states that are low or
Dude,
declining in population.
that's gravy right there. That's gravy right there. Absolutely, brother. No, yeah. So thanks for that. Totally agree. And Vermont's a great state. It's a beautiful climate. My goodness, it's a cold climate, but it's a lot more temperate than I'm used to. The winters are a lot wetter, more hardwood trees out there. Zone 4, USDA Zone 4, Vermont. But yeah, lots of green, lots of water. A good buddy of mine, Ben Falk, been on the space before. He's up there, and they're crushing. Beautiful land and very, very abundant. So, hey, folks on YouTube, um, because we're running both of these super chats, I'll definitely anybody throws me a super chat, and I'll look at that. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to maintain both these things. And thanks to Smith for managing the space, and also here on the chat, super helpful. And
I told people to post it down below, and listen, you guys.
Oh, that's cool, brother.
Both at the same time, because Curtis has a big following on YouTube, so the chat's really interesting. There's a lot of cool characters in there. It's good discussion, so jump in.
Yeah, right on, folks. And so, yeah, Smith, feel free to chime in if there's a question that's catching your eye that you think would be a fun one to bounce off at us. But yeah, going back to the farmer thing that we were talking about with Truth Farmer there, the other opportunity young men can have with farms is that there's a lot of older dudes out there, call them guys in their 60s, who have done a particular trade for a long time, and their kids generally aren't in that trade. Sometimes they are, and you'll meet men that work with their children, which is always awesome to see. But these guys are keen to show a young man, you can just apprentice for a carpenter. Don't even worry about getting your carpenter's journeyman, any paperwork, any of that stuff. There's so much demand in trades, and just to do physical work that requires skill and coordination and a bit of strength and dexterity. There's so much work out there, and it's good paying. Even bushwork. You know what I've been telling young men, or trying to tell young men more these days is, if you're in your 20s and you want to just you see what's going on. You see what's going on with the New World Order, and you want to get out of the city. You want to get out into a smaller community, rural area. What do you do for work? There's tons of stuff you can do. I mean, one thing I'm telling a lot of guys to do is do bush work in the winter and farming in the summer. So there's all kinds of bush work you can do. You can do firewood. You can work at a mill. You can do even things like carpentry, just to say get out of bushwork, but carpentry and stuff like that. You can work over the winter. Learning to be a heavy equipment operator is a really, really good skill. And if you're a young guy, it's an easy thing to get into. You can learn to just run a machine. People will teach you how to use a machine, and you can become a good operator. You can work all winter doing work like that. And then if you can also become a heavy equipment mechanic, if you understand mechanics too, I mean, you can make a lot of money doing these kinds of things. And then in the summer, you can kind of take a break, because if you do that kind of work, you go to something like farming, it's relatively easy in comparison to that kind of work. And the conditions are a little bit nicer. Doing bushwork in the winter is tough work. But I mean, even these guys a lot of the guys who do firewood that I meet, sometimes they're young guys, sometimes they're old guys, but they'll work on road crews and stuff like that, or they'll like road building crews for logging access. So they'll drive trucks, or they'll run machines, heavy equipment. They don't use fallers very often, but they'll run heavy equipment to do that kind of logging. You can get really good paying work if you're a guy who shows up, works hard, and gets good at something. People will just throw you stuff. The opportunities, because, and this is why it's so easy to get into something that seems. Imagine 20 years ago telling, yeah, get into construction, get into working on a road crew. Could you imagine saying that 20 years ago? For me living in Montreal, being a hipster, that was like, no way. I want to be a cool guy. I want to work at a startup. I want to do something like that. Thanks, Smith. Yeah. And but now it's AI is replacing all of those jobs. All of those things that all your really smart liberal friends you went to university with, they're all being made redundant. And stuff like bush work and farming is going to be valuable and it's going to be rewarded because less and less people are willing to do it. And yeah, you can learn too. You'll make more money in the bush. Another thing too, the guys in Canada, tree planting. I did Canadian tree planting for 9 years, mostly in British Columbia, but I did do a stint in Alberta, a couple stints in Alberta, and a couple stints in Quebec, actually. But I had the full Canadian tree planting experience, and it's a thing I did for 9 years, and it put me through music school. I went and studied music composition at Selkirk College in Nelson. And then I formed a band there. And then we moved to Guelph, Ontario for a year. And then we moved to Montreal for 6, 7 years and just pursued music. And I would just go back to BC in the summer, plant trees, work my ass off for 2 or 3 months, come back with a shitload of money and just do what I wanted to do. And how fun was that? But imagine doing that and then saving and then keep working instead of just fucking around partying like I was doing. It was fun. I can't wait to play music again, but it was fun. But these times that we're in are serious. And I think people can really get ahead if they just work hard. And it's such a cliche because it's Americana. It's total Americana. And it's a total cliche. But it's more true than ever because the average guy is a total beta male who just doesn't who just wants to sit around and is pasty. You shake his hand and it's a clammy, weak handshake that you ever have that where you shake somebody's hand and it's just totally underwhelming and you're immediately like kind of bummed out on them. You ever had that? Smith, you ever done that where you shake someone's hand and you're just like you just put off by or they grab the one where some men do is a grab your fingers. You ever had one of those?
The too quick handshake. Oh my God. Me and my
Dude,
buddy growing up, we'd say right in the crook. That's what we'd always say when we shake hands because we open your hand really wide and you push the crook of your hands together so you get a nice big handshake. You spread your hand out. You don't want to squeeze too hard, right? You want to try to act like you're real tough. You just make sure it's firm.
that's right.
Absolutely. Always.
My that was a thing that my dad hammered into my head is that he would practice with me. Okay, let's shake hands. Show me. You initiate the hand, and I'd get nervous, Oh, I shake my hands, dad, I shake dad's hand the wrong way, and no, do it like this. But it is so important because I think what it really says in a handshake, and a handshake means so much today because so much bullshit. People don't even want to shake hands anymore because of COVID, you know. But now it's more important than ever in the fortitude of an individual, especially a man. Like, if you're going to work with me, are you serious or are you just well, maybe I can do something for you,
Now there's no spine in anything anymore. Everything is so sappy with that. I totally get that, and it's the old, soft men create hard times.
That's what it is, dude. That's what it is. And that's where that is where we are. And that's the devil's game. That's where we're coming back to this full circle to this, the devil's in the details thing is that's where we are. The details of over intellectualizing everything, justice and then social justice. The republic, then the democracy, the foundational idea to the technicality, or the culture that's gone too far, where we leverage the idea of culture too much, and oh, it's about artistic culture. Like Smith. I don't know if you were much in the art scene in Montreal, but I was in the art scene in the early 2000s in Montreal. My band would play gigs at art galleries, and we'd play these really pretentious events, and the art is just mostly just garbage. Sometimes it's literally that it's great.
Not to say so though.
Yeah, they'll shush you like how dare you?
How dare you say how you feel?
Exactly. Just such.
I was in art school here.
Oh, you were.
Yeah, for sculpture. That's what I wanted to add all my years of permaculture design, I wanted to take on sculpture and see what I could pull out of it. And I pretty much stopped going when they, I would say about certain stuff, that's up its own ass, and they'd say, you can't say that. And I was like, yes, I can. You can't tell me what I can and can't say. It's up its own ass. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, dude, have you ever seen that movie with John Malkovich, Art School Confidential?
But
You,
I know it.
oh, that movie is everything if you've been in any kind of art school. It is unreal. Today too, probably even more funny because it wasn't politically correct. And so it was just a funny damn movie. But yeah, man, that's the scene. And that's where we are. That's humanity. It's living in cities is really an experiment, is a human experiment that hasn't really happened for that long. If you think about, I don't know, the grand scheme of all of our known history, people haven't really always lived in cities. They have in at many parts in history. Of course, there's been cities in Rome and whatnot, but so many more people were distributed and had more space. And this whole idea of mega cities and all that is fairly new. And it seems to me that it's an experiment that's kind of coming to a close, especially when you look at all the divisive politics and divisive things in the culture today, especially post COVID. It's just, we were talking about this a bit last night. Just my goodness. I mean, I was talking about the old Montreal days and how it just wasn't politically correct back then, and people just didn't care. I remember when I first moved to Montreal, I was so fascinated how people were so friendly, and I didn't even speak French. I got better at French years later after being there for many years, but I was fascinated, and these were the days you could smoke in the bar. So Quebec, and I think in particular Montreal, was the last place in Canada to allow smoking in the bar. And so when I was there in the early 2000s, people were still smoking, and I hated it. I was fascinated with Montreal culture, and I'd go out to bars myself, and I'd leave there with like 10 friends. People would just start talking to you. And I just found that so fascinating because coming from the West Coast, my big city experiences have been Vancouver and Seattle and Portland. And it is so not like that there. And maybe it's something about cities where it's gray for a long period. Like Vancouver is gray for 6 months, that it just demoralizes you and makes you kind of depressed. But in Montreal, I found it was just so different. People were, hey, how you doing? There was a lot less of that pretentiousness, like, oh, who are you? You meet somebody 10 times and then you see them at a social gathering and they still pretend that they don't know you. You know what I mean? That kind of person.
Yeah, it feels like a village here. I think the population density is the key to why, it feels like a livable city still. But of course, I actually wanted to punch in with a question, but that could get kind of boring because you mentioned the Canadian housing bubble. A lot of people don't know about that in the U.S. I've learned something about it since I came here. There was another question too, because and I'm just going to make another nugget for you because I want to call on Cowboy. He's been real patient. But you talk about the cities, and I in the last phase, I want to ask you how you felt about rigid registry, eco cities, and all that kind of stuff. Go ahead, Cowboy, fire away.
You're talking about like the cities on the West Coast and people acting like they don't know you. Conversely, in the South, man, if we meet one time or we have one conversation, we're like best buds.
Damn straight, brother. That's why when I started going to the South, I was so into Southerners. When I first started going down to Tennessee, I was so into Southerners, how real they were. Southern hospitality is the real deal. But you meet somebody once and it's like, yeah, man, no pretending that we didn't know each other. Total bullshit.
Yeah, y'all come on down for supper. Yeah, just to back up just a little bit, you're talking about like opportunity, and you're talking about like trades and the opportunity that's out there. One thing I would consider any younger person that's looking to get into the trades, because, and it may not be like this everywhere, but I know in my area, farriers, horseshoers are really becoming harder and harder to find somebody to do that kind of work. And with people wanting to get into homesteading, maybe a horse doesn't fit into the homestead, but goats need hoof care, like a lot of livestock do. So I think that's a huge opportunity, and it's a dying art. The other one, and if I were younger and looking to like make my way, um, which I do weld, I can weld. I grew up. My daddy was a fabricator, so I grew up around it. But you know, welding is one I always encourage people to do, and
Yes, absolutely.
not just MIG welding where you really just pull trigger and the machine does all the work for you. Like if the shit hits the fan, you know, you ain't gonna be able to run a MIG welder. You're not gonna be able to get your shielding gases, and we ain't gonna have no electricity to run the machine. Learn how to braze, right? Hot fire and the filler metal, and you can make anything you want. And it works off the grid. So those would be the two in some form, shape, or fashion, or the other that I would look into if I were a younger person looking to like, start my path.
Absolutely. Great stuff, brother. Great stuff. Hey, Smith, I'm gonna go and make sure my internet timer doesn't turn off because of my off-grid system. I'll be right back in a minute.
It's 2-2. Make sure to mute your mic, Curtis, if you can. That would help for feedback on the recording. It's 2207 New York City time. The devil's in the details. With your host, Curtis Stone, at Off Grid Stone, official Twitter for Off Grid, with Curtis Stone, formerly known as the Urban Farmer, entrepreneur in Southern BC, Canada. Freedomfarmers.com. That's the link. You can click it. Cowboys in the space as well. I'm the co-host with the co-most, Jimmy Leaftender. Thank you for listening, folks. What's that PFP? Purple one. Ruby Luscious. Thank you for listening. Glad to have you in the space. Here's another cool one. Diesel Hound. Love the PFP. Lori in Arkansas. That Truth Seeker is in the space. Glad to have you. Birds born in a cage think flying is an illness, says. Ooh, here's another cool one. Green Pill. Pierre Dranlu. Montreal-based artist, permaculture designer, free thinker, and student of Kung Fu art info. Oh my God, I have to follow this guy back. You're in Montreal. Oh, how cool is that? And a permaculturist. Really glad to make your acquaintance. I actually got to throw you on a list, my friend, but I don't have time right now. Work in the space at Acid Split in the space, building on Bitcoin Cash. Real fast, repost the space. Let's see. 9 reposts, 3 quotes, 5 bookmarks, and 17 likes. Yes, it is worth a bookmark. I agree.
So what happens there, Smith, when they bookmark it? Does that timestamp it or something?
A bookmark can go in a folder and it saves it for you, so you can organize them by folders. But one thing to know about the algorithm is that bookmarks skyrocket things. So if you want to, don't bookmark it if you don't want it, but if you it helps.
Okay.
It makes it much easier to find later if you want to share it so someone can listen to the recording, because it's really, at least in my opinion, I'm not super tech savvy, but going back and finding old spaces and listening to them can be kind of a pain in the neck.
Right.
It makes it super easy.
Thank you for that. You know, one thing I've been doing actually, and people, I don't promote my Rumble channel enough, but what we're doing is all these spaces also go into Rumble. So if you just at Off Grid Curtis Stone on Rumble, you'll find my channel. And so it's an audio file. We put a generic thumbnail up there, and you can listen to it up there as well. One thing I'm trying to do with these spaces is I like to play a song at the beginning and the first ones that I did, just kind of getting used to doing this whole thing. When you're hosting the space on Twitter and you're just experiencing it there, it plays this little music if you want it to, and then people kind of trickle in. And so when people do spaces, they'll often just let that sit for a while. But unfortunately, that replays really bad because it's just dead for like 5-10 minutes. Like, what's the hell's going on? And so what I'm trying to do is play music right out of the gate, play the full track, and I'm starting to play some longer tracks like that. That one I played tonight was a group called yeah.
Edit the space. As soon as it's over, you press play, and as the creator, you just drag it, and you can cut off all the beginning of the space.
Oh, dude, fantastic. Okay, that's great. That's good to know. Thank you. But what I'm trying to do is just play a track, and then that way, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. I didn't even talk about that track. I opened up with that. This has been an hour ago, but that group was called the Ambient Jazz Ensemble, and they're a pretty interesting group that I really enjoy. You ever heard of what kind of music do you like, Smith?
Man, I love jazz too. I like everything. Nowadays, I mostly listen to like ethereal stuff, James Blackshaw guitar, stuff like that, beats,
Yeah.
I'm working.
Bonobo, you like Bonobo and Boards of Canada?
Anything that's choral, any like the monks who chant, any monks from any tradition who chant,
You like that too? Okay. Right on. Quite an eclectic mix. Yeah, I'm the same way. I like all kinds of music. I think I mostly listen to just newer jazz music because it's contemporary and interesting. I love old music too. And I go back to a lot of that kind of stuff, but I kind of find it fun to follow the career of new artists. And I like some jazz guys like Nate Smith. I really like a guy named Mark Lettieri. He plays guitar, one of the guitar players for Snarky Puppy. And these guys are all around my age. And I feel like if I would have stayed in the music scene, maybe I would have got to know these guys and perhaps played with them. But I got out of it. But I can listen to them and enjoy it the same. And it's kind of cool to see, you know, guys just going for it and doing interesting things because there's a lot of music has just been done to death. I find I can't listen to pop music at all. I hate it. And anything that's in the top 40 can't do it. Um, and it's boring, and it's super boring. You gonna say,
we got to end up.
yeah, give her.
We got a new one in space. It's Chris, but I'm going to mute your mic. Make sure to keep your microphone muted. Make sure to follow Curtis Stone on Rumble as well. Vojtak, Ghost of.
Hey, I just want to piggyback to something you guys were discussing as far as Southern um, people in the South and just city dwellers and people in the country. I just moved out of California several months ago to Kentucky, and it was no shock to me because I travel everywhere. But my wife was pretty much a couple weeks in shock as to how polite and nice and genuine the people in Kentucky are versus the snobby, nasty, two-faced people in California can be. So that's definitely not something just people from the South say about themselves. It's a fact, and I think it's greatly underappreciated. And people on both coasts have been brainwashed by design, but by the people in the media, calling the middle of the country flyover country for their own gains. I don't know.
Yeah. The snobbery is unbearable, and it's all going to come full circle. It's all going to come full circle, and we're seeing it now. Is that this modern day liberalism is over. It's over. It's so the cultural attitude, call it, is unsustainable because number one, these people aren't having children, and number two, their relationships aren't based on any. I'm making really broad strokes terms, but bear with me. Are people on the land, people in rural communities are connected to one another because they need each other in some way or another. You get firewood from a guy. You trade animals at an auction house. You get to know other farmers. You get to know people on more of a needs benefit than in the city when everybody's just working, doing whatever. I'm working on a computer here and I'm working on a computer there. People don't have a reason to get to know one another. And so the relationships of people in cities is just unsustainable, especially as we have more divides politically. But when you go to the country, it's just a completely different world. And I find it refreshing.
Curtis, we have Camp Creek Hill, Spiny Stalkers. Haven't heard from you yet. Are you there on the mic? Do you have any questions for Curtis? Better luck next time. Let's pitch it to the host, Mr. Stone.
I love that. Hey, Smith, where are you doing that? You said you have another phone that has that soundboard on it. Is that what that is?
No, in this case, it's just when you have an iPhone, you get a soundboard. It's part of the deal.
Oh, okay.
I'm not an Apple I hate Apple, but it's just, you know,
They make stuff that
gotta have
that
something.
we use and it
Yeah.
works. Yeah. Hey,
God, no. Coastal Cluckers into space. Oh, she flew the coop. Dagnabbit.
hey, we got a super chat here from Darren. You guys are also missing a big reason on why there is a labor shortage and less interest in the trades in the West. Big time labor shortage in the West. Absolutely. Yes. That's why I was saying earlier that you can move to smaller communities now and just get work. Whereas before, all the jobs were in the city. But now there's a lot of demand in jobs in communities, and you can work in trades. Like I've told the story about a plumber buddy of mine who was going to school to be a nurse, and then the shots happened, and he said, "Hell no!" And he was months from finishing his program, and he walked away from all of it, and then got into plumbing, and now he's making $50 an hour plumbing 2 years in as an apprentice, just crushing. And he brings his own tools, and so that's why his boss is paying him $50 an hour. It's like, dude, you're basically a journeyman. Here you go. Here's the tool. You know, you bring the tools. Here's the job. And so, and what I've been telling guys too, like what I would do, you know, when I was working hard, when I was tree planting and doing that in BC, I was working hard. I was motivated to make money, to go out, and I had a goal every day. I wanted to achieve a certain number. Back then, there wasn't opportunities to save money like there is today, particularly Bitcoin. So the great thing about Bitcoin, you know, I could go into it on for another things, but the great thing about it is that it's an asset that constantly appreciates. Yeah, it waxes and wanes a little bit. When you look at the long term of Bitcoin, it keeps growing. So if you're a guy today and you're doing some kind of trades, you're making money, put $1,000 every month, or maybe $500 every 2 weeks, or something like that. $200 every 2 weeks, whatever it is, into Bitcoin, and just constantly buy and spread it out over time. And then that way you spread your average. And then maybe if you're just doing this monthly and it starts to go down, maybe you might go, oh, maybe I'll put a little bit more in for this period because it's at a lower point. But young guy could do that for 2 or 3 years. And I guarantee you, in 2 or 3 years, that investment is going to at least double. There was nothing in the economy, and I've been buying precious metals for 20 years. I've never seen the kind of gains in the short period of time that you can on Bitcoin. The long term is insane, but the short term, and the point I'm trying to make with this is that when I was young, if I wanted to save in any kind of asset class that was just something I could do easily and passively, to do anything in the stock market required infrastructure with your bank account and just bullshit, paperwork, a bunch of BS, a bunch of new line items on your tax code. Bitcoin, so you can buy Bitcoin for cash. Buy Bitcoin for cash. Go to all precious metals dealers now. Yeah, but the better thing is you can buy it completely off grid and have no KYC the whole way through on your Bitcoin.
Definitely superior.
So if you have hard wallets, and you can have multiple, they're like $30 each. There's nothing wrong with having multiple of them, but you can go into metals dealers, and they're always buying. They're always buying or selling Bitcoin. And so you can go and get some for cash, have multiple accounts. There's no KYC. And so you can have that hard wallet hidden and do whatever you want with it. But there was never a savings opportunity like that before. And the thing that's so cool about it right now is that as we're moving towards this consensus coming of this central bank digital currency, that they're pushing us all in that direction. Though there's always going to be options, I believe. But Bitcoin is an opportunity that, man, you just can't get. It didn't exist before.
1,000% agreed. And I want to punch in here because I think this, in my mind, ties back to the communities. And based on a lot of the things you said, I want to shift gears into solutions, because I'm curious what you have to say about eco cities in general, and also how you see the landscape going forward. Just for me personally, like the idea of having, like you said, things more spread out, but like intent, like communities, right? More communities. And I think that have sovereignty. I think that's really the only way forward, is if there's ways for us to keep our sovereignty.
Yes.
in our community. So what do you think about that? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, dude. It's something I thought a lot about. And during COVID, it came up even more. Even the ideas of getting a hold of small cities politically. So say, small cities where there's like 1,000 people, 2,000 people, and get in there and take over the political apparatus. It's not that hard to win small town elections. Like my brother-in-law won an election living 1 year in a small town in the area and got into the council immediately. Knocked on doors, talked to people. Imagine if, because I really have no concern for and no hope for the federal politics and international politics, any of that. But on the local level, on small towns, I wonder if we could create them, Smith. You're talking about this ecological cities, this idea of people living together with, basic principles in earth stewardship and also just basic principles, maybe in commerce and ways that we work together, but creating a real alternative. And I wonder if one way to do that might be to just take over councils of really small towns that are like, there's 4 people on council and there's one mayor kind of thing. Get in there, unincorporate the city. So unincorporate it from the higher jurisdiction state, and then put it in a trust or something. I'm kind of spitballing a bit here, but there's probably ways where you could literally take over the apparatus and get it out of the jurisdictional control of a higher authority and get it into something higher than it. And in British Columbia, Canada, we have an interesting little thing here. Not little at all, but if you've ever, I don't know, in Smith, if you living in Canada, have you ever been to any event and they do that virtue signal out the front where they say, we want to recognize that we're standing on the territory of the Silex Nation, and they do, that what I'm talking about?
Sure.
That whole song and dance. Well, the thing that's interesting about it is that in British Columbia, what they're saying is 100% legitimately correct, in that the most of the province here was technically unceded, meaning that the authority here has less authority than perhaps other places in Canada. Thinking Ontario, maybe, where the apparatus of the state is just so much more there present. It's a lot. Ontario is it's overwhelming. Ontario is very much like an American, at least Southern Ontario is like an American state. It could be a Northern Michigan, it could be an Illinois. It's a big place. Southern Ontario is a sprawl. But out here, we do have this thing with the unceded territory, and it does create interesting opportunities in this sort of legal nebulous area that we're in. And perhaps maybe there's a way to kind of leverage that as far as creating these communities, because are you talking about necessarily going out and building it, like a bunch of people buying a 160-acre quarter section and going out and just doing everything? Or are you talking, go a bit more on what you mean.
Okay, so like, for example, what Bill Mollison said about the future of solar, that it's a community thing. Like it should be a group, like, because a lot of the people who do off grid, like they're talented like you and they can actually do it, but not everyone can. So the question becomes, how do you, well, that's why, I talked about the network before the railroad, which is largely there, but people can't connect the dots. And so, yeah, the question becomes, what will it look like? You know what I mean? In the things you're talking about, if we're going towards solutions, what does that world look like? You know what I mean? Like, are there in terms of what becomes nation states? Because I think nation states will cease to basically become, well, it's like Buckminster Fuller said, you have to create something that makes the old obsolete, right? And that's kind of, it will just become like with Bitcoin, right? You talked about it. Once people have, and another Bill Mollison quote, he said, it comes down to where you bank your money and how you spend it, and having personal control without a middleman sticking their hand out to jack you for $1 for each transaction. And then they paint the picture of what the world will be through our earnings.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do so it's interesting you mentioned Buckmaster Fuller, and he's such an interesting guy, and I found that Jacques Fresco guy interesting too. But I don't know, I have to say I kind of got into that whole zeitgeist thing, and that's where he became famous, is that the second zeitgeist. Yes, the third one. That's right. Okay. Um, the thing that I find interesting about that whole Venus project, and so folks, if you don't know, I'll give you a quick kind of synopsis. This, if you haven't seen the movie, the Zeitgeist movies, they were really popular, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that. And they started with this whole kind of blowing open the Catholic Church, and that's connected to the banks and whatnot, and the Federal Reserve and all that. And then kind of, I forget what the second one was. Maybe it was, it doesn't matter. But in the third one, they go to this solutions thing about, here's another way we could live. And there's this whole idea of the Venus Project, which is basically this sort of technological utopia, if you will, of really practical technology that just serves people. And there's no private property, I think, in his thing. And that
Economy. And the thing about it is, it kind of failed to launch because, again, it's like not everyone can be a genius like Fresco. That's why I turned to permaculture, because to me, it's a toolbox anyone can pick up and use.
Exactly. I totally agree. Fresno's whole thing is, it started to sound too Marxist, because then you always have the question of, well, what do we do with the people who don't want this? Like, maybe people don't want to have everything communally owned and want to have private property, you know?
Hey, we got a hand up. Let's check in. Hands are popping up all over the place. Truth Farmer, fire away.
Hey guys, I'm a firm believer in nothing is hidden, that they show you everything. And I seen a couple of weeks ago, CBC had an article, December 21st, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, for our American friends. It's a state-run propaganda network. And they had an article about the concern. It says province says it remains concerned about the safety of off-grid communities. And there's off-grid communities popping up in northern Ontario,
Yes.
wilderness, in unorganized places. Did you see that article, Curtis?
Oh, I did see that. And dude, can you share that in our Twitter space? Can you put that, if you can pull it up, that would be sweet. But you know what? Yeah, do you want to add anything else to that?
They said that the concern about these popping up was that the neighboring communities were concerned about healthcare and garbage.
Oh, of course. Of course.
People living, being healthy, growing their own food are concerned to the health system, and garbage.
Well, it is.
People who are commercial stuff, who are growing their own food, doing all this, it just seems so ridiculous.
Oh, dude,
those are the two excuses. I was like, come on, guys.
It is, but let me riff on that a bit. And I got a question here from Larry Moore in the super chat, so I'll get to that next. But again, this is another thing: devil's in the details, God's in the fundamentals. It's another what the government really does at a fundamental level. What they do is they have an arrangement with you, unbeknownst to yourself. You tacitly agree that they will administer your affairs and you'll pay them to do it. And so it's always how the offer is. In the case in point, the article that you mentioned in question, that was, we're worried about people being off grid because we're worried about safety, right? It's always something like that. Oh, and it's some kind of virtue signal from another group to try to get in and administer your affairs. However, the thing is that we have to remember, this is so important as this whole train wreck goes forward, is that it's always an offer, and you don't always have to say yes. You can say yes if the offer sounds right. You can deny. Often that leaves you in default or belligerence, and then you accept in a tacit way. You can go silent, which is a straight up tacit agreement, and that get you on, or you can conditionally accept. You can accept the offer on conditions and renegotiate the contract. And it really is that simple. And the whole world works that way under commerce, and the whole British money system in the banks and all of that. It is all voluntary. And so we have to remember that going forward, that we don't have to just go along with all this stuff. I got this super chat here I want to get from Larry. Thanks a lot, brother. Moved my trade business out of the country 5 years ago. There is no competition where I go. in rural areas. My son and I are at a brazing class in Texas right now to increase our knowledge and skills. Good for you guys, man. And good for you for doing that with your son. I can't wait until my kids are older. Not that I can't wait. I'm enjoying every minute of it, but it'll be fun to be at an older age where your kids are kind of teenagers or young men or women, and you can go and do things like that, and it's yeah, super, super cool. Media Bear in the house on and hey, Media Bear, I got your email there, and I'm gonna get back to you there. It says, man, John, I wish I knew that a year ago putting together a battery for my e-bike. Yeah, what are we saying here? We got anybody else wanting to get on the mic? Get on the hot mic? Hey, Darren.
Sure. For actually have a really good nugget of surprising. Before we talk about Ontario, fearful about off-grid communities. So when you and I first started talking, I was first becoming a barber. I get to see a lot of cool people who sit in my chair. One of these guys is a guy who's been working on systems for the last 30 years. And he actually made a bid with Ontario to do this all things GTA right now. And what he believed is that they defined this option and that they did it the cheapest way possible. And what I'm alluding to from that is that he's already talked about in our area, our improvements, that because of this growing increase of demand through electric vehicles, it is severely reducing the lifespan of the parts that are used to burn all this electricity, meaning that we're consuming so much electricity that is putting more and more of the load in our system, and it's causing more and more problems. So there's one of the many reasons why they don't want people getting more electricity, right? Because then, as we talked about before, right, that's you were on the lines, right? But if this is already to be somewhat true, and I've already seen it in the communities with different pulp mills and stuff like that, it's scary as shit.
It is. It is. And good point. And whoops, there we go. I had my mic off. Yeah, good point, brother. And yeah, it's all this controlled demolition. They just want people to be pinched because they want to force the population to do something effectively. Here, let's mute everybody's mic there. They want to force you into something, but they don't want to technically force you. They want to get you to do it by just guiding you there, but they don't want to actually force you. And so that's how they operate. And in a way, we can kind of rest assured that as long as you can withstand the sort of slow attrition of services, utilities, and things like that, there's going to be pockets of communities. And Smith and I were talking about that earlier a bit too, or that came up in the stream just about these microgrids. And that's essentially what I've done with my power system here is a microgrid. I'm going to put other buildings on this property eventually, and they'll all be connected to it. The house is on it, and the cabin that we live in currently is on it. And so yeah, absolutely. Microgrids, because yeah, talk about cost effective as far as kilowatt hours. It's amazing. Another super chat here from Larry. Thanks, brother. The metaphysician question. How much do you think SBRs are going to be affected in a negative way in the upcoming year? Do you think there'll be an anomaly in the market? SBRs. Well, I thought it was SD. Do you mean SDRs? What's SBRs? I'll keep an eye on the chat. You tell me. I know what the special drawing rights. I don't know what you're talking about. But I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Clarification on that. We got a hand up in the space. Chris Fenning, fire away. Hey, Curtis, brother.
Hey, brother.
Long time listener, second time caller here. I'm really digging the sounds from Smith there, and it kind of adds like another level here.
Dude, Smith is the real deal. I had a blast with him last night, and we just were chatting today. And then and he said, "Hey, do you ever want me to come on your space?" Like, let's do it tonight, man. So
Yeah, this is probably old news to a lot of you guys. I'm just cranking super hard, so I don't really even follow the news. I think I mentioned that last time we were chatting, but kind of the few people I talk about this stuff with in my little town, there's this thing on YouTube called The Great Taking. And we were kind of talking about how it was even on YouTube, or why they even put that up for people to watch, kind of like that law you talk about, how they have to tell you what they're going to do before they do it. And
yes,
I had a chance to watch it, but it's all based on all that derivative stuff that you were talking about earlier, which I kind of barely understand. Some form of short and long term gambling, I guess. But yeah, just kind of curious how what your vibe is on the next wave here. Like how intense you think that's going to be, and if they're just kind of trying to string us out here and play with us, or if they're how soon this is going to get hyper serious. I guess.
I wonder. Yeah, I mean, I wonder, brother. But I think it depends where specifically, because North America is a pretty big place too, right? I mean, my conditions up in southern BC, rural Canada, I'm not near any major populations, hundreds of miles, many hundreds of miles away from any major populations. And so, but think about all these migrants coming across in Texas, think about that shit. That's just crazy what's going on down there. And then they're flooding them into these big liberal cities, and the cities are just becoming absolute shitholes. So I think all kinds of conditions are going to pop off, man. I think it's all going to be felt mostly in the cities, though. The economies in the smaller communities are very different than in the big cities, and just the homelessness. I mean, I go through my hometown, Kelowna, BC. I was there not too long ago, and I did this. There's a strip now. We call it the Strip, and it's down Clement in the north end of town, and it's a full-time, year-round tent city that seems to be doubling like twice a year. The size of it is doubling twice a year. And so I think we're just going to continue to see more. I don't know. What's it going to be that pops it off? I mean, if anything pops off, it could be this cyber attack thing, right? And they've given us notice on that. So we know that's on the table, right? We know that the World Economic Forum published a document called Cyber Polygon. And it was another sort of tabletop exercise, much like Event 21, where they go through what would happen in the event of a major cyber attack, right? And so that could be on something. And with the tensions between, at least the tensions they say in the media between Russia, I don't really believe any of it. I think it's just all the war propaganda is total bullshit. And we don't really know what the hell's going on there. And they just use it, just like in 1984, to create a constant fear of World War III, right? And that's what they got it all on the table now. It's World War III. It's climate change, right? It's another pandemic. It's the cyber attack. It's the migrants, it's Israel, Palestine. It's like all the issues, throw shit at a wall to see what sticks. I think they're just throwing more now and hoping more of it sticks. But I don't know if it is, is it sticking? Are people believing it?
I'm gonna punch in here real quick. The devil's in the details of Curtis Stone. Repost the space. Listen, if you're on the mic, make sure you keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking. That's why I remove people, because their mics are open and it creates feedback on the recording. We got a hand up. It's Bear's Worth. Fire away, Bear.
Hey, Curtis and Smith. How's it going, guys?
Good, brother. How are you?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I might have had my mic on there for a second. I'm trying to figure out. First time I've been on Twitter. I actually just signed up just because you were saying about the spaces and stuff. So still trying to figure it out.
Right on. Elon, I hope Elon should be giving me a commission soon, but not yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I had a few things just from listening to you about the whole Bitcoin thing. The only thing I did get into Bitcoin, and I still got quite a bit, is about cashing out, because now in Canada, like every site that you can trade it on wants like your passport, your phone number, like everything.
Cash out for cash, brother. Go to the precious metals dealers. And if you want to say cash out 20 grand worth, you might have to go to a couple guys. Actually, I bet 20 grand you get from one guy easy. But go to those guys and get cash.
Gotta unmute your microphone. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's what I heard. Yeah, no, that's cool. That was my next step. Yeah, because yeah, you gotta pay taxes. That's part of life and stuff. But at the same time, you're like, well, I made this investment like years and years ago, and then yeah, you just hate to give the government like 40% or whatever the heck they're gonna want.
That's insane.
But,
Yeah. Don't give them that.
yeah. Yeah. So, but anyways, yeah, and no, man, you guys talking about the trades. I'm a plumber up in Vernon in BC, and man, and I own my own business for 9 years, and then the amount of money you can make being a tradesperson, definitely, yeah, and especially gas fitter and like selling the products. Like best advice you can give is trades, man.
Absolutely.
You can make so much money, like selling furnaces, air conditioners. Like you can make 2 grand in a day easily. Like some days, not every day, but it's pretty lucrative sometimes.
Yeah, what's your opinion? And thanks for that, brother. What's your opinion on you said gas fitter, plumber? What are some other hot trades you're seeing a lot of action in? Like, what about HVAC as a trade? Is that a good one these days?
Yeah, that's what I do too, man.
Okay.
I do a lot of furnace re-and-re's. I'm more of a residential plumber. So I don't do new construction. I'm a one-man show. And that's the biggest thing in my town, like so many one-man shows. So it's hard to do big projects and like new construction. I stay away from that because it's hard work and yeah, man, any trade, man, in my opinion, even electricians, but I think electricians is a little bit less, but then it depends what you want to deal with too. Also being a service plumber, sometimes you got to unplug toilets, work at rental houses, sometimes you got to do stuff that a lot of people don't want to do. So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff.
That's where the money is, though, dude. That's where the money is. I mean, I met a guy once who made a few $1 million on a septic cleaning service. He had the sucker truck, and then he started renting porta potties, and he did all that, and he turned it into a multi-million-dollar business and sold it and walked away, and he only did it for a few years. So doing things that people don't want to do is often the best thing to do. So, hey, I want to go back to Larry Moore's super chat here. He said, and he meant short-term rentals. So how much do you think the short-term rentals are going to be affected in a negative way in the upcoming years, Curtis? Do you think there'll be an anomaly in the market? I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be potentially, well, if people are going bust on their mortgages, that will probably affect a lot of short-term rentals. In the short term is in that if a bunch of places had to go into foreclosure and say they were rentals and those renters had to get out for the title to transfer or whatever to happen or for it to sell, that could create an immediate disruption in that, which could be terrible for a lot of people. It's interesting, like talking about all these things. I mean, they just want to shuffle us around, right? They want you. This is what I've been saying for years. They want you wagging the dog. They want you doing whatever it is to keep you from crushing it, to keep you from moving forward in your life. They want you in the rat race where you're just constantly in the rat race. So, whether you're in trades or whatever kind of work you do, there's going to be a rat race, but anybody can get out of the rat race. It's just how you manage your money. And I'm not a money guy, but I do think Bitcoin is a pretty sweet investment that you can't get in other places. Like you want to buy, especially if you share a lot of the values of things that I talk about on these streams, is like it's metals and it's Bitcoin. And I don't like other crypto. For me, everything else is shitcoin. Bitcoin itself, there's no board of directors. The decentralization of it's better than gold and silver in that it's easier to move around. because you can go anywhere with it and immediately take out large sums of cash. Here's the reason why Bitcoin actually works so good, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but whether you like it or not, there's always going to be an underground economy. So the US dollar has been the underground economy forever. And you can make all kinds of statements on why Bitcoin is bad for some ideological reason or whatnot, but it's no worse than the US dollar. But it's better in that it is not printed to go to war. And that's fundamentally where any moral argument or case you make against Bitcoin is completely trumped against, well, what do you use for a dollar? If you use the US dollar, you're using the hegemonic currency that's backed by guns, and it's enforced militarily through the world. And that's what it is. Bitcoin at least isn't that. And so you can criticize it however you like, but there's no thing, especially today in such rapid inflation that we're in and changing conditions, there's no thing you can put your money into that's really safer. Like there's no point of having a savings account or a 401k or an RSP or any of that garbage, in my opinion, because that's just all government garbage. Bitcoin is better than a bank account. It can be, you can have no KYC. And if you want to wash your Bitcoin, there's tons of ways to do that. Guys you get Bitcoin and then you buy Monero, and then you can just basically use the Monero as the trade and then trade back into Bitcoin. And then it's basically been washed. That's what a ton of crypto people do. I don't particularly do that. I've never done that. I have held a bit of Monero, but I got rid of all my shit coins and just went all into Bitcoin. But there was nothing that you could do like that. And so a trades guy like I think it was Chris that just called in, you can make money and then just incrementally save in a decentralized system that if you want to go down to and now live in Nicaragua, maybe you want to go start a business, maybe you want to go start a plumbing business in Nicaragua, you could do that. Could we mute the mics here, Smith? You want to go down and do that, you can find somebody in Nicaragua that's going to take Bitcoin. And so you can get the local currency right away, better than a bank account. You want to wire money, anything like that. The legacy banking system is so outdated. And, going to that, I'm going to get it to a bigger issue here because I think, I don't know how much longer we'll do this. Yeah, an hour and 40 minutes in. I think Smith said no more than 3 hours. Like, we'll definitely shoot for less than that. But the bigger issue with everything that's going on, I said this in a couple tweets this week, is that no matter what the issue you're talking about, politically, whatever it is, if the conversation isn't about getting the issuance of money back in control by the people, any political discussion is irrelevant. Donald Trump is irrelevant. Robert F. Kennedy is irrelevant. They're all just irrelevant. A guy like Dr. Shiva has got some real stuff to say, but he'll never get elected. But that's okay because he's out there just getting the message out. And I think him running an election is giving him some traction, and all the power to him. Why not, right? But if the conversation isn't about taking back the issuance of money, which is the thing that controls the birth certificates and creates the whole securitized system that controls all of our personas in the legal world, it's the foundation of that. Because how do governments print money? They print money by leveraging your ass. So your birth certificate is tied to a security, and it's traded on a big stock market that you have no access to. Maybe some people say you can access it, but most people can't. 99.9999% of people will never figure this out. But it's traded and it's bonded and it's securitized, and you are openly a slave in a way in the system as the way it's set up. And so until that fundamentally changes, and the money itself, because the way the governments borrow the money is they say, oh, we got this many securities out there making money for us, that we leverage that to a creditor and say, hey, these suckers will pay us taxes for the rest of their lives. What will you give us for them? Or as that asset, what will you give us? And they trade us constantly. That's how they print money. At least on the international stage, it all comes back down to that. And until that fundamentally changes, nothing will ever change, because I shared the quote earlier this week. the Mayor Rothschild quote, which is, I care not who makes the laws of a nation if I have the ability to print the money. And so the whole system is controlled by money. And until that fundamentally changes, any political rhetoric from any politician is just gobbledygook. It's meaningless. What are you saying to that, Smith?
I agree. I mean, it's like the Bill Mollison quote I mentioned before. It's all about the money, and until people can see that, and I think that's why the crypto is such a revolution. Like you said, people are still scared of it. There's a lot of scamsters. Of course, a lot of people get into it for the money. But the idea is that we can actually use it, that we would have some sort of control over our own. Imagine that. Imagine that. We got some hands up. Go stuff. Fire away.
Sorry, fat fingers. So Curtis, in your opinion, for the masses that are listening, what's the best choice of investment, crypto or Bitcoin in this case, and versus buying land to farm, to live on, versus
Mr.
real
Flynn
estate?
does not give financial advice.
You know what? It's a good question, and yeah. I'll tell you what I would do right now if I didn't own land right now, and I had an opportunity to move into some asset, because a lot of people are trying to get trigger happy with land. I think if I was in the space right now looking, I would sit out for a while and I would move some money into perhaps Bitcoin. And because as this ETF market comes into Bitcoin and there's the halvening that's happening fairly soon, it's a sure shot that Bitcoin is going to pump again. It could double. And so if a guy really had the opportunity to time it, and I think you will, because I think as things bottom out in real estate, it's going to go, especially in Canada, it's going to go for a while. Because like I said, the most amount of mortgages, you can Google this, the most amount of homeowner mortgages ever purchased in Canadian history, as represented as a percentage of the population, happened in 2019. It was 68.9% of of people who bought real estate bought as homeowners. So they bought to live in the house.
You guys, for Americans who don't understand this, you can find videos on YouTube and TikTok. I forgot the exact name, but it's basically Canadian real estate versus actual castles. And this guy compares these. It is one of the funniest things you have ever seen. And if you understand what Curtis is talking about, that could explain it better than anything.
Yeah, totally. Those are hilarious, dude. And thanks for that. But no, go ahead.
What is KYC? You mentioned that phrase several times.
Know your customer. Know your customer. So when you buy Bitcoin on an exchange that's connected to your bank account and you have to wire or e-transfer money into it to get the Bitcoin, it's got a whole KYC infrastructure set up. So when you signed up for that exchange, you had to scan your passport or driver's license or whatever. And so now you're fully in the system. So when you buy Bitcoin on the street, there is no KYC, because the reality is of Bitcoin is that it is what the US dollar could never be. The cash is always going to be used by criminals and underground markets. And in a way, that's what it's there for, because just because something's illegal doesn't mean that it's wrong, right? But anyways, there's always going to be an underground economy. And so Bitcoin is just a more efficient way for the underground economy to save money. So a guy who's a drug dealer or a pimp or a thief or anything that's degenerate and crime, but not all crimes are necessarily bad, but those ones are for certain. Either way, that money exists. A black market economy will always exist. You'll never get rid of it.
Curtis, we have two hands up and we have a really great super chat question, just to let you know.
Okay, let me just finish this thought. Thank you. Is that those people need to have a way to save money. And so because they do, there's always crypto that's being bought and traded for cash in these places like precious metals dealers, probably pawn shops now too. I wouldn't be surprised. We'll have Bitcoin because it's just a practical way to store money. It's far easier and there's far more upside than anything in the bank. What do you want to do, Smith? What should we do? The super chat here from Darren?
these hands up are getting really tired. And the super chat just went up, but it's a good
Okay.
banger, and it's cool because we got a crossover from Darren Stupak, who's hanging out here. He jumped over. Really appreciate that.
Let's get him in.
Let's check in with Cowboy.
All right.
So, interesting point you bring up about Bitcoin, Curtis. Briefly summarizing the American dream, man, we touched on it earlier about, now for the last 30, 40 years, we've been preached to about you have to go to college. If you want to make money, if you want to have things. The American dream is you get married, or you go to college, you graduate, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you have this quote unquote 9 to 5, you make a bunch of money, all this other stuff. But, we see how that's played out, right? Like most of America's obese and unhealthy and miserable, unhappy.
Yeah.
Conversely, if you learn a trade, you go into business for yourself. And the gentleman, I can't remember who it was, but he's a plumber, I think, in Canada. It's on the show. See, that's the way to do it, because if you do it that way, and we touched on this last night, one of the things that we can do as citizens of the globe, if we want to take back control of our sovereignty from these governments, they can't operate without our money, right? The currency of our labor, right? So if we, work for ourselves, we can do jobs for the current fiat currency, and then take that and put it into crypto, and it's untraceable, right? Like the governments can't tax what they don't know you have. So if that's the kind of thing that you think about, like me, that makes Bitcoin. I mean, obviously the gains that you can make on it's great, but for me, the more attractive thing is exactly that fact that you can trade this fiat monopoly money that under the current system that we live in as Americans and as Canadians. And diversity, obviously, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Like buy livestock, buy equipment, buy ammo, buy things like that.
Dude, that's better than anything. Buying equipment, buying seeds, buying tools, buying things that are useful is far better. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, we're talking about a Bitcoin is a financial asset. Somebody said in the chat, an EMP happens, your Bitcoin is gone, buddy. It's like, dude, EMP happens, your dollars are gone, unless you're holding all of your dollars in cash. If EMP happens, your dollars are gone too. It's the same thing for everything. The thing that's better about Bitcoin, though, is that the entire blockchain, if you share and you're a miner, this is what's really valuable about Bitcoin in a way, is that the mining infrastructure, which is the collective of the network of all the computers that use it, if they run the blockchain protocol, the blockchain is updated on every one of those computers as it goes. So if an EMP happens in one area and wipes out all the computers in, say, North America that had the blockchain, all there would have to be is one computer in the world that had the blockchain on, and then that blockchain could be repopulated back onto the network immediately. Not even the US dollar could do that. So Bitcoin is actually more resilient to an EMP than the US dollar. Unless, of course, you're talking about cash. But how much actual money in the economy is cash? Very, very little. Most banks with their fractional reserve lending, where you go to the bank, put a mortgage in down for $50,000, and then they loan you back $500,000 at interest, right? It's a complete scam. But that whole system is completely vulnerable to EMP, more so than Bitcoin. So Darren had his super chat here. I love how no one talks about all the BRICS, that the BRICS countries that are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And there's more now signed onto it, but they call it the BRICS. Why are people investing in America? Africa is going to be the next things the West and the East fight over. Well, yeah, because there's so many more resources there. But that might be the case.
It's the next thing. I think they've been doing that for a long time.
A very long time. Absolutely. It's always been that way. and it's going to continue to be that way. But it'll be interesting to see what happens to America and just the West in general, or sort of North America, really. Canada and the US are in the same boat, no matter how we splice it. Um, we're tied at the hip. So whatever is going to happen down in the States is eventually going to happen here.
Well said. Let's check in with Truth Farmer.
Hey guys, great chat again. Yeah, it was. I haven't been a Bitcoin guy. I've been an equipment and land guy. I've been buying and flipping, you know, agricultural equipment, land, getting it into cash, and then buying more land again. And that's been really good for me. I bought quite a few properties in the last 5 years that I flipped. And the nice thing about a piece of land is, you know, as long as you pay cash for it and you pay the taxes on it, it's a real safe bet. Nobody's coming to take that from you, you know, unless, you know, things get really crazy. But I think we're not that far down the road yet where the government's just going to start taking all your land. But for me, that's been a real easy sleep at night kind of move. And my other point I wanted to make is when I was living in Ontario, once a month I used to hold an event at my flour mill and feed mill where we'd in the evening we'd have a big meeting and we'd have like guest speakers and we'd have all kinds of people who were interested in like gardening, farming, back to the land kind of people. You know, 30 anywhere from 25 to 50 people would show up every month, and it's just a free thing. And I'm just curious, Curtis, if you've seen other things like that happening around the country where there's like groups of people that meet monthly to talk about the kind of stuff we're talking about here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. In fact, in the area that I'm in during the COVID lockdowns, I joined fairly quickly. I found out about a community of people that were getting together every Wednesday night at a local hall, and the owner of the hall is a truther, and he was willing to host these meetings without, you know, the best wishes of the local government, so to speak. And we had these meetings, and it was great. It was when I first moved to this area, I got really into the community, met hundreds of people really quickly, and it was really cool. And so, yeah, I think those things are going on still. I think people are getting a little lazy with this stuff because of we don't have COVID now. So the present threat from the state is a little different. I think it's moving to economic measures and cultural measures and more fifth generation warfare than it was with COVID, though COVID was really a psychological warfare as well, but it was still a bit more viscerally experienced. What's that?
We had a lot of new gardeners. Everyone became gardeners when COVID hit. I remember.
We did.
Seeds ran out.
We did, man. Yeah, I got a lot of it was funny because in Kelowna I had been a darling in the media for many years, and then I started kind of coming out talking like a libertarian or an anarchist, and then they all of a sudden didn't like me much. But I remember at the beginning of COVID, I was getting some interviews from organizations like Global News and and such, but I immediately started talking about, you know, the lockdowns and all that, and they immediately just shut me down. It's like, oh, they want to talk about gardening, but don't talk about the New World Order. Don't talk about what's really going on. Yep, exactly.
That's what they want. You got to keep it cute. It's like the news when they talk about some lost puppy who got found. Oh, shucks, isn't it swell? My God, do you think there'd be something more interesting going on in that wide world out there? It's 2304 New York City time, -5 UTC. The devil's in the details with Curtis Stone. Be sure to follow Curtis if you don't already at Off Grid Stone. We're double streaming up. Official Twitter for Off Grid with Curtis Stone, formerly known as the Urban Farmer, entrepreneur in Southern BC. That's British Columbia, Canada. Freedomfarmers.com. Click the link. How many we got?
What do we
11
got?
reposts, 3 quotes, and 9 bookmarks. Hey, let it fly. Grab a mic if you got a question for Mr. Stone.
Yeah, folks, I would encourage more people. Thanks, Smith. I encourage more people on YouTube to try and get on the spaces, because it is it's easier to keep up with the conversation. The chat, it's hard. I've always had a hard time with these streams keeping up with the chat. So I appreciate people who throw the super chats this way. At least it gives me a highlight that I can follow to. But if if you're not on X, I mean, it really is a totally different type of social media. I got off social media years ago, and I hated it. I had a pretty big following on Facebook, had a number of pages and whatnot. And then when the scamdemic thing happened, I was just so bummed out on everybody on there that I was like, I can't stand here anymore. This is just unbearable. So I walked away from it for years, and I wasn't never really on Twitter much. I had some profiles made, but I didn't really use them. And getting back onto it, I joined X this June, and it's growing quite well. But it's a totally different type of social media experience. It's what is it, Smith? Like, is it the fact that now Spaces is this new thing in Twitter, or is it that Elon has changed enough in X that there's just more dialogue going on because there's less BS with censorship? What's your take on that?
Sure. So I've been pushing. I'm glad you asked, Curtis. I've been pushing X in the YouTube chat, trying to get people to come over, and they have, and I appreciate that. Yeah. So I've been on here for 2 years. If you look back, it was many years before I was hooked to my Facebook, so it just all my Facebook links came here. But I was invited by a friend of mine out here about 2 years ago, exactly, in fact, and right around the holiday break, and into Spaces though. So the thing that number one, it's freedom of speech out here. There's no other social media platform. Maybe Rumble. I don't know Rumble as well, but the main ones people use. Twitter is like well known, right? Compared to Rumble, for example. It doesn't have the same amount of users. Like it's growing fast right now, though. But compared to like Facebook, etc. But you guys, the freedom of speech angle is really important to me. Also with Spaces, it's like talking on the phone again. So you talk to people, and it feels like you know them for much longer, right, than you actually do, which is the thing. The other thing is, space. Anyone can open a space. This is a push button podcast. Okay, anyone can come in here. It's very simple. Anything's when you first use it, it's going to seem clunky, but it's very simple. This app. That's what I like about it. It's super simple. And Spaces, you can have 3 hosts, you can have 10 speakers, and you can have like tens of thousands. You guys, the conversations I've heard in here, they have businesses come out here with their engineers or whatever to talk to the public. They want ideas. There's revolutions occurring in name a country, right? Name a country. Like there's all kinds of interesting stuff happening out here, and it's like fresh, it's hot, it's fast. It's the freshest, fastest news that there possibly is, and it's coming from real people talking about it, not filtered through, right? We all know. And independent media is on the rise, and I think that the goal of this app since Elon took over is they want to make it into an everything app. And so people are coming from Reddit, people are coming from YouTube because, it's weird. You never thought MySpace would die, nor Facebook, whatever, but, it was a weird jump to change it to X, but I think that it's growing at such a rapid rate and it offers such a unique experience that for those who like Spaces in particular, if you like it, you love it.
Yeah, man. Would you agree with my analogy that I made earlier that compare a live stream to a space? The fundamental difference that I'm finding is that uh, a stream is about quantity and a space is more about quality. Would you kind of agree with that analogy?
Sure, it's also the format, right? Because you can have your own radio show. It's not on a stream; it's a chat. And so, like when I was on Facebook, I remember I didn't know what I was doing. I'm just trying to go live on Facebook because I thought people would come on and I could talk to them, right? But it doesn't work that way. Out here, you can have a bunch of different people actually come up on the mic. It's just like your regulars are calling in like it's a radio show, right? And that's why I'm kind of treating it like that, right? Be a little more he's got the YouTube rolling and then he's just reacting. And so we're not getting right. Well, at the same time, it's a trade-off because we're drawing in people who want to actually hear what's happening. So they come over. So it's a trade-off, but there's never been a better time to be small, right? If you're small on this platform, my numbers, you guys, I'm trying, you just come out here and talk in Spaces and you're just gonna, your numbers just grow, in fact, if you really want the best tip I can give you, follow NFT God Alex Finn. He is really like a programmer guy, and he's also an entertainer. And he probably gives the best advice in terms of how to use the platform. And there's a lot of new changes. I mean, it's small, right? But it's nimble. And so they're changing things at a rapid rate since Elon took over. Soon there's going to be video out here as well. And so there's probably be a chat as well, right? Because they want to use crypto, be able to do exchanges, book stuff. Like they really want to go for an everything app. And so when it comes to creating content, the content that I actually want is on this platform because I was scared of Twitter, right? It's X, but I was scared of it, right? Like a lot of people were because people's lives get ruined. But the point is, it's real. Like it feels like it's better than a video game. You know what I mean? Why play a game when I can do it for real? And out here we have all these little gangs. You jump into spaces, you chase your friends through the spaces, and you create DMs, and it's just a ball out here. I mean, I've never in the past 2 years I've laughed, I've cried. I mean, you guys, I feel closer, and it's weird this idea of like in real life, if it's real, if it's not. But I feel much closer to the people I've met in spaces over the last 2 years than most of the people that I see on a daily basis.
Well, I can see that just in the intimacy of voice conversations, right? I mean, it's again going back to what I was saying is just about quality over quantity. It's really interesting. I think once X goes to video with spaces, YouTube streams will be done. I mean, that's the ultimate. Because could you imagine doing this right now? We can have 10 people as speakers and we can bring people in and out. So you can really cycle through hundreds or however many you could potentially in a space. Tens of, not hundreds, but in video, Zoom can't even really do that hardly successfully without being kind of clunky. If it's all in one place, it's just the velocity or the friction is so much less that it's quite crazy. People get so hung up. I see people in the chat in here just going on about Elon and all that, and it's like I don't know why people obsess over these people. Somebody's like,
he was the darling of the left and then the darling of the right. You can decide.
Yeah, and who cares? Do you care about what the CEO is of the car you're driving? Do you care about the CEO is of the food you buy or the gasoline you purchase or any other thing? Not really. So people want to obsess and sort of idolize, perhaps in a negative way, like whether you're hating the idol or worshiping the idol, it's still idol worship in some way, obsessing over an individual. Oh, and I don't trust it, but it's like, dude, you're using YouTube. Do you trust the CEO of YouTube? I don't. So what is it, what does it mean though, really? Like, so it's like, who cares? Who cares about Elon and about what he's saying? It's like, is the thing that you're using working? And do you enjoy it? Because if not, if you're going to rail on about Elon this, Elon that, but you're railing on X about it, it's like, well, dude, he's letting you do that. So I mean, it's better than most other platforms like YouTube. It's ridiculous.
Platform. He actually uses his own platform. He likes it.
That's right.
Zuckerberg doesn't use Facebook. He's not hanging out on, you know what I mean?
No.
Elon comes into spaces.
Yeah, he wouldn't. He could just show up. It's ridiculous. But no, it's true. He uses it, and so that makes it different. But at the end of the day, I use a number of his products. I have a Tesla, I have Starlink, and I'm using X right now. And it is what it is. So people are railing on about Musk, and I know James Corbett is very critical of him, and I love James Corbett, but at the end of the day, uh, you know, he's not on it. Good for him, but I don't know. This
get mad at power. He's one of the most powerful people in the world, and he's going to have his share of haters.
He is. That's exactly it, and he does, and you can see that. But whether how powerful he is, I don't know. I think he's powerful in some ways, but I mean, he's not the one printing the money. The guys that are printing the money, until a major other thing is created, guys printing the money run the show. And we can find ways in and around that, but it is fundamentally the truth.
We shall never speak ill of the holy techno king on this platform. Let's check in with Cowboy.
Yeah, that's interesting to think about. Like, what is it about Twitter or X? What is it about Spaces? I know for me, like, I'm always like a face-to-face or verbal guy, right? Like I'm not one of these guys that wants to communicate via text or email. If, someone starts texting me and it turns into more than just a one or two back and forth, simple yes, no, whatever, few word answers, I'm going to call your ass. I'm not going to sit there and have a conversation over text. In business, I'm the same way with the emails. Like emails are great to have a paper trail, but at the end of the day, like, we're going to spend an hour and a half going back and forth on emails, or we're going to have a 5-minute phone conversation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when I joined Twitter, I think in June of last year, so I guess 2022 now. I found Spaces pretty early, and I was just enthralled by them. And most of the things that I do on Twitter is through Spaces. Just because of that very thing. Like it's people, it's a group of people. It could be a small group, it could be a large group, but you're actually communicating with people with your voice. And Curtis, you mentioned this last night, and it's kind of been touched on today. Going back, not to beat a dead horse about like opportunity and with owning businesses and doing trades, like as somebody who farms but also does commercial work, commercial construction as a business owner, like people's communication skills have just nosedived tremendously over the last decade. People don't want to have conversations. They want to do everything in an email. People don't know how to treat people. People don't know how to talk to people. Everyone knows the catchwords like keyboard warriors. People don't act right when there's no personal touch to the communication. But, if you see someone face to face, or if you're having an actual phone conversation, people act more normal like they would in real life. And that's just what draws me to that.
Well said, Cabo. Let's pitch it to Curtis Stone, your host of the most. The devil's in the details.
Yeah, man. There's so much to it. I mean, the chat's popping off. It's hard. The thing that's funny about doing both of these things at the same time is that they're so different. And I think it will be cool to kind of just bring everybody over onto X eventually. It'll be a lot more consolidated, but I'm seeing people talking about the Elon Musk thing is always a hilarious thing. Somebody says, well, you'll care about when X pulls the plug and does the bait and switch. It's like, dude, they're all going to do that eventually. So
YouTube's owned by Google.
Exactly. This is all a bait and switch. The whole thing, the US dollar is a bait and switch. Your mortgage is a bait and switch. And, everything is a bait and switch. So it's like, pick your poison, man. Whether it's Elon Musk or voting for Donald Trump or whatever it is. I mean, I would say using Elon Musk's products will deliver you more value in your life than voting for Donald Trump, and noticeably so. But I don't know. Pick your poison. What are you saying, Smith?
Man, yeah, I just, again, it's like Cowboy said, the personal touch, and at least out here we use our voices. And like I said, bringing back talking on the phone, that's why the communication skills have dropped. Everyone's texting. I mean, you ever text someone and then call them during the text and then they don't answer? Like they got holding
Yes, I have had that.
Anxiety.
I know.
They have so much to call them on the phone. My God, sometimes I don't have a phone. Like sometimes I'll just leave my phone and show up at someone's house. Like those are the friends I really like. I can show up at their house and knock on their door and they don't think I'm a stalker. I'm like, there was a time people, maybe I lost my phone. There was a time people didn't have phones. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know. I totally agree. But that's how I am too. And actually, you and I sent some. I like how X has that, because I use that feature for pre-recorded voice messages in Telegram. That's how I communicate with my whole team. We barely have meetings. We just send voice messages to each other in various different groups or whatnot. We do everything there. We don't use a Slack channel or anything. We just do it all on Telegram. and it works great. And it's cool that X has now got that. Got a couple of super chats here. I think I'm going to jump to. Last one from Darren. Thanks for that, brother. Again, funniest and saddest thing ever is seeing people with face diapers on in their car by themselves. Oh yeah, dude. It's I still see it, and it's shocking to me. Yeah, yeah. Oh, hey, Darren. There he is.
Shit right here. I don't know if you realize, not that you care about what goes on in the school system, right? But this is like the cherry on top. As of this school year, K-9 is no longer required in BC to have a letter grade. It's all meets expectations or doesn't meet expectations. Well, what the fuck is expectations?
The board, it's just, yeah. And what that is a really long-term subversive attack on the idea of meritocracy itself. That is the foundation of Western Protestant culture, Western society. The meritocracy, that's where absolutely.
That the school system is designed to make us the ideal sheep, the ideal consumer, right? And people are wondering why they're having so many issues with their kids, right? It's like, well, let's be honest. How many hours in a day do you actually spend with your child? Maybe 4. What does the school get every day? At least 6.
That's the thing that's scary, right? Especially with all the woke shit, is that now there are so many people that are absolutely brainwashed, and they trust the state and their political figures that espouse the ideology that is correct for them. They have more trust in them than the family. This goes right back to East Germany. This goes right back to people informing on each other, informing on their families, right?
Hey, you've got a new speaker coming up. It's Kenneth Miller getting on the microphone.
Hey, Kenneth. You know what? Let's hold Kenneth for a minute there, Smith. I'm just going to read this other super chat here from Restoration Homesteads that says, hey, Curtis, saw an article about the sun activity phase and the ease for the solar flare to knock out communication in its fear mongering or signaling for what is to come. Yeah, absolutely the big solar flare. But again, do you really think that they want that to happen? Do you really think they want to knock out their entire control grid if X is a bait and switch, YouTube's a bait and switch, if the Bitcoin's a bait and switch, whatever, pick your poison? Do you really think they want to knock it out? I bet not. I bet you that the threat of the solar flare or the threat of the EMP is just like the threat of nuclear war. That's just most likely never going to happen. Let's bring in our next caller there, Smith.
Let's hear from Kenneth Miller. How you doing? Unmute the microphone there, Ken.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There he is.
Clear.
Thanks. So first time on X. Been a follower of Curtis for a while. Hi, Curtis.
How you doing, brother?
You helped me finding a property in Missouri a while back, and I didn't expect to be on, but thank you.
My pleasure. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, I was just listening on YouTube and switched over to X, and I had no clue that I was going to be on, so I didn't have any question or anything prepared to say, so I'm just winging it.
Oh, dang. Okay.
That's all good, man. Chiming in. It's good to hear from you.
Sorry, I got to blast him. I'm kidding, Ken. So glad you made the jump. Got to blast you. Just make sure to keep your microphone muted when you're not speaking. And yeah, isn't it cool to actually come over here and talk to Curtis? That's the point, right?
Amazing experience for the very first time. Totally unexpected.
Right on, brother. Hey, well, you know what, Smith, would you mind piping in for a minute while I go take a quick pee break? Thanks, brother.
It's live streaming with Curtis Stone. The devil's in the details. Repost the space. Thanks to the laughs, Christy and Tila. Thank you for listening. Wile E. Coyote in the space. Yeah, jump over to X. That's the point. That's why I was pushing in the YouTube chat. I can see people without profile picture. They look like trolls. They come up. They leave their microphones open. So they're either trolls or they're newbies. So put a profile picture up there. It doesn't have to be your face. You don't have to use your real name out here. You know, that's the culture. Some people choose to show their face, but that's another great thing about spaces, okay? Because it's just voice, you don't have to show up on the dang screen, okay? Which is a lot of pressure for people. And, you know, you can be in your underwear or whatever, and you don't have to show up like that. You can listen to it like a radio show. But not everyone wants to do social media like that. Like, hey, look at me, and you know, like Instagram stuff, right? I use my face. Curtis uses his face. You know what I mean? You just got to remember, this is the Wild West out here, kind of, right? It's adult. So I remember I had a friend out, invited her out here. We had a great space. She was telling me about the DM she was getting. She's like, you know, some porn bots or something. I don't know. And I said, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. You know, Twitter's for adults. It was Twitter then. She said, I'm an adult, right? But the point is, it's freedom of speech out here. So it's not Facebook. It's not any of that stuff. Like, you're not going to get banned for saying, I mean, you will for certain things, but compared to any other place, you can come out here and say things and hear things that you're not going to hear anywhere else. You know what I mean? Really. So, I mean, and they're going to add video soon. It'll probably just be for the host and maybe the speakers, but yeah, it's really popping off. And yeah, I agree with what Curtis said about worshiping people. And listen, don't believe anything I say, you guys. I'm a clown, literally silly butt at your service. Oh, hey, ho. But point is, if I say don't worship the holy techno king, I don't worship Elon Musk. I'm saying I know who I work for. If I'm on his platform, you know what I mean? You don't do that. You know, it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Look, if people want to go out and bash him, fine. It doesn't matter to me. It's your freedom of speech to do what you want. Point is, I like it out here. You know what I mean? And there's plenty of other things to talk about and be critical of other than Elon Musk, who is, you know, quite frankly, a mover and a shaker. And if I was betting money, I'm betting on him. I mean, look at all the things that he's accomplished. You know, say what you want about his politics or whatever, but yeah, he spent a lot of money to save this platform because he believed in it so much and how important it was. And you know, the cool thing about Curtis that I really like, you guys, because he's like a conservative hippie, and I really identify with that. And especially because he's lived in the same kind of place as me, in Montreal. I'm from the United States, but he's doing it, and he's also talking, because some people say, you know, well, I came here for gardening. This isn't permaculture or whatever. It's all connected, right? Just like we talked about the money, it all loops back through. But food systems is a great place to start.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for covering me while I took my wee break there. Yeah, it is. And man, so much exciting stuff going on. Another oh, I thought I missed it. Oh, never mind. I thought I saw another super chat there that I missed. I did not. We got anybody with their hand up in the space who wants to jump in, especially anybody new who wants to come in that hasn't spoken yet? Feel free to chime in if you haven't chimed in tonight. I'm seeing lots of familiar faces in the space here. That's pretty cool. Some familiar faces from last night. And how many we got in here now? 50 something, 57 in the space right now.
We have 57. We have also 12 reposts. Let's go for 20 and 3 quotes. So that's 15. 24 likes and 9 bookmarks. 9 bookmarks. That's impressive. I want to shout out to A Mama, AIM, MB, America First, Wife, Mother, and Vet Family, Native Family. One long-time gardening spaces listener, listens to my permaculture spaces. Really glad that you found this and they're in the space. Thanks for the love. Make sure that, well, in fact, now that we're talking double streaming, if you're going to use X, the best way is to use your smartphone. If you have a smartphone, that's the best experience you're going to have. And then you do the live stream, for example, if you're double streaming, go on YouTube on your computer and then use your phone for X. It is better that way. And also, you can raise your hand if you want to speak. It's always better that way, and have something ready to say, a question or comment, something interesting, something spicy.
Smith, what's your take on Canadian healthcare since you've been here for a while now?
Woo, my God, we could do a whole series on that.
I know, right? Private versus popularized healthcare and the hot mess that Canadian healthcare is because we have the shitty hybridization of both.
Yeah, it's just such a joke. Yeah, what's your take on that, Smith?
Ooh, on healthcare. Okay, so my view into healthcare mostly came from being the clown of Mr. Broussard, and so I went to him with his appointments, and he had people coming every day to do all that. That to me was the great thing. Like it seems to me like it's not perfect, okay, but compared to the United States, like you have no money, okay, die in a gutter. You know what I mean? Whereas here, I mean, it feels like, and maybe I'm in Quebec too, so there's something to that. I've been in France, I felt the difference, but it's still North America. You know, the Quebec are their own, but they treat it like it's their own country. But Canadians are still Canadian, right? So I would say that there is more of a collective sense of, like, when I deal with people in a general way, not even in healthcare, for example, like public services, people are so helpful. I mean, in general, you guys, it's like they're on the same team or something, you know? And that's the point, I think. Whereas the United States, it kind of is like, hey, that's not my job or something, you know? They give you the runaround. They're not trying to be so helpful all the time. And I myself am a veteran. I'm a disabled veteran, and I was in Air Force 6 years. And so I've also had a taste of the VA, and I haven't actually had to go to the hospital there. Anytime I did, I paid privately. And, you know, I just went to some clinic or something if I needed something, but really I haven't needed anything here. So my eyes was how Mr. Broussard was old man, and they have this thing called CHUM, CHUM. And that's where all the old people are. They have, like, you know, it's just a great facility downtown. I was really impressed. I mean, by that, really, just the facility of it. The idea that, like, for example, if you come from a family, like, there's no one to take care of, I don't know who it might be, but like someone to come and make them a lunch or to help them take a bath or get them out of bed. One of the things I did for Mr. Broussard, he had a lifeline. I had to run over and help him move just a couple inches sometimes, you know. So the thing is, though, it's a huge expenditure to have all those people coming and going all day. My God, you know, and the consistency of the service is obviously not good. Like, it lacks the personal touch, right? Especially for him, he was very finicky about the people that come there, and so and then if you he always would say yes to the service. For example, here's a problem that I would say is that if he has a service where they come and do something for him, if he stops the service, then it's a real danger, because the amount of time it takes to kickstart it again can be quite a lot. Okay. And so it's better to err on the side of keeping the service, which is then not even really needed sometimes. And so therefore is an expenditure, right?
Constant cost.
Could be actually used more wisely. So yeah, I see a lot of problems with it, you know, there's no question, but, yeah, I would say that's probably all I know about it.
Right. Yeah. And
all your benefits. And most people don't realize too, in Canada, you're wanting for your family and long-term care. They're taking at least 60 year income every year, not 7.
see that and it's a total racket, you know, it's a total this whole thing to break down the family unit so much that people are just sending their parents away, right? It's everything is so compartmentalized. And then when your parents get in there, it's an absolute boondoggle because they just take advantage of, we had my wife's grandmother was in long-term care like that, and she was explaining the costs to me one time. It was like $6,000 a month, and the food was shit. And it was just, I mean, it's an apartment with there's you know, there's some full-time people there, but it's terrible. How terrible is it? And then what the government does too is they try to regulate what you can do on your land so that you can't accommodate your parents. This is one thing that's been a total disaster in British Columbia under the Agricultural Land Reserve Act, or the Land Commission Act, which basically divided a bunch of zoned a bunch of land that was all farming to now be in ALR. Smith, would you mind muting the mics? There we go. That they would basically trick people into this big scam, this collective land scam, and then regulate you. And again, it's the same old scam with the government. You pay them so that they can administer your affairs. It's the ultimate boondoggle. But they get people where they're breaking up farmers generationally. And this is actually what drew me into the most of my exploration into the law was when I went to a town called Nanus Bay on Vancouver Island and went to a restaurant called the Rusted Rake and met a woman there who was running this restaurant. And it was cool. It was connected to a farm and it was this great homestead for this family. And the government was just so in their business. And it just was so illogical because in British Columbia, which is, leftist, as they say, toes the line on all the typical political positions that leftists toe the line on, particularly environmentalism and climate change. Yet they have policies that really create major economic inefficiencies in how businesses operate, which you would just end up burning more fuel. You got to take all your animals to slaughter at an abattoir. You can't just do it on your own farm. Things like this, these premise ID things, all this stuff is just designed to get you, disincentivize you off the land. And what people got to start doing is reading the law. And it really is as simple as that. People always say to me, how do I learn this stuff? Where do I start? They want books and stuff. It's just like there's endless books. Just start reading the statutes. If you're worried about mandates that are coming down the line, read those mandates and just really read them carefully and question everything it says. In British Columbia here, we had the mask mandate that came around at the height of the lockdowns and all this nonsense. And right in Article 4, on the first page of it, there was the medical, the exemption right there. Article 4 basically says if you have a medical condition, and the term is super broad, if you have a medical condition, you don't have to wear a mask and you don't have to prove to anybody what that medical condition is, no matter what. That was right there. And so the remedy was there. People got tickets and fines and all kinds of BS. But if they took it to the court and they took that to the judge and said, look, there's my remedy right there. There's no justification for this charge. They dropped the charges. They're thrown out. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say the courts are always just. Wouldn't try to make that claim. However, if you look at the record of people, particularly in Canada, I don't know how this translated into the US, but in Canada, people that took those charges to the courts won by a vast majority, won. And fines got dropped. I knew a woman in my area got a charge. I told her just to accept all the charges, and then they threw it all out. She said, I'm taking it to court. She didn't have to go to court. They just threw it out. It was done. It was a $3,000 charge. And she was terrified. She was a little old lady. She didn't have a ton of money. And she was terrified about that, but they threw it out. She was asking me, what should I do? What should I do? I'm just wait and see, because they're going to throw these things out. And so the old wait and see.
It's 2338. What do you think, Curtis?
I'm thinking if there's any more hands, we could do some more hands. And then I think we'll shut her down tonight. We'll shut her down within the next 20 minutes or so there, Smith.
Okay, we have someone eager to speak who doesn't know how to use hands. Let's check in with Bruce.
Sorry, I did put my hand up and they took me off and I'm able to speak. So.
Can I break balls?
You can. What?
How you doing, Bruce?
Very good. Sorry to be BC centric, but I live in the Lower Mainland in Vancouver, British Columbia. And what I'm starting to see problems happening is we're getting turnover of land in our area, and what's happening is they're using it for commercial parking for trucks, and it's basically farmland is being used for that. So I don't know how to fight this. I'm going to have to go to City Hall, and it's going to be interesting, and that's something I was just going to chime in on as well.
What's your concern? Like, I know you're talking about all these East Indian truckers,
I didn't.
but it's the truth. It is what it is. But I mean, how does that affect you directly?
Well, there's trucks. It's just down the road from me, and there's 5 acres of property parking 25 trucks on there. It's also a question of that once that land is gone, like once that land's been not used for agriculture anymore, it's gone, right? They put down stone basically to drive on, and then
yeah, right.
It's still but it's residential property, right? And they're not allowed to do that.
Well, and
That's
this
my
is
biggest problem. So.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think that the problem is that when you set precedent in the law, and then there's exceptions that you can see people are obviously exploiting, it makes it seem unfair, right? That's kind of what you're getting at, is that, hey, they're saying this is in the ALR, and then these guys are just parking trucks on it. And yeah, for me though, I don't share the sentiment that, oh, it's that land's going to be used for something else, and then it's not going to be usable as farmland. I don't buy into that argument, mainly because farming gets more and more efficient the more it advances. And so small scale farming is more productive than ever. Even lower mainland farming with greenhouse infrastructures and stuff, you could take away a quarter of the farmland in the lower mainland, and it would actually, in my opinion, really affect total agricultural output very little. A lot of things too are just exported and you don't even see them. I mean, even in Kelowna, a lot of agriculture just goes straight to Japan. Like a lot of premium cherries just go straight to Japan. They get packaged in a little piece of plastic. Each cherry gets wrapped and it gets sent off. So I don't know. The other thing too is that a lot of those farms aren't even farming anyways, and they don't want to. And the economic conditions, especially in the lower mainland, are so that the land is so expensive that it doesn't make any sense to farm on it. And you can't necessarily blame the guys for wanting to park trucks there, though I don't like it either. And I wouldn't want to live near it because you'd probably be smelling a lot more diesel. You just sure. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think fundamentally, though, it proves that these programs that the government do have no effect. The ALR is supposed to do what you're suggesting. It's supposed to kind of protect farmland, but it actually does the opposite.
They have no teeth, right? There's nothing behind them. So.
No, that's true too, and that's also a benefit if you're on the other side of dealing with them in maybe a different condition, because the ALR has done more damage, in my opinion, to farms than even say these big groups of East Indian farmers that get together and just bought land, and they're more prosperous than we are because they collaborate better than we do. And so in a way, you got to hand it to them. You got to hand it to these guys' success that they've played it smart. They came over here, worked hard. They 10 people living in a house, it's common in the lower mainland. But they've succeeded, and maybe it's time to get to the lower mainland. That's what I think, and I think a lot of agriculture is going to, because they're incentivizing it out. And yes, the growing climate is superior for greenhouse operations for sure. Not much else, in my opinion. But it is what it is, and yeah.
Let me punch in here and just say, whenever you get a notice that says you've been muted by the host, it's not Mr. Stone, it's me. Okay, so don't be mad at Curtis. Just don't keep your microphone open, okay? That I keep a clean board out here because we're trying to get it done. We got a new speaker. It's Morgan. Are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Morgan, I'm clear.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, just first time calling in, first time on Twitter. Just been following you off and on over the years, Curtis. Of what you're doing here now, and enjoy, checking in once a week and see where you're at. I've picked up quite a few things with gardening with you over the years, and just appreciate what you do.
Hey, thanks for that, brother.
Yeah, I'm just over in the Slocan Valley here, and
oh, nice.
Kind of a retired carpenter. Started with a little piece of land homesteading about 8 years ago here. So probably at the same elevation as you, about 2,000. That was
pretty nice dump of snow we got here.
Yeah, what kind of stumps do you farm?
Well, just it's just kind of a joke. A lot of the property around here are old logging sites, where guys. I've got a little bit of river bottom land that I grow in and raise a little bit of livestock, and there is some stumps on the property as well.
Well, what we got, I remember back in the day when I was a young tree planter, and I planted in the Kootenays many, many years, and they do range grazing out there, right? So they do, guys will graze their cows on government land miles out and just let them go out into the forest. And we had to plant trees next to stumps because, like you said, a lot of these areas were old clear cuts or smaller selective logged areas, things like that, where you get these small landings in that the Kootenay Mountains, that valley driving down towards Nelson out of Castlegar is such a massive valley, and the mountain goes up so high, and you get little spots up on these beautiful. If you're facing the south in the Kootenays, it's amazing. I mean, I lived in Nelson for 2 years when I went to music school, Selkirk College there, and that valley in Nelson faces north. And so that town sucks in the winter. There's no light. But you drive up towards Ainsworth along the South Shore, as they call it, and there's some properties, especially if you're not on the highway, that are just gorgeous, unbelievable aspect looking down into that valley. And it's a really neat climate out there too, because it's semi-temperate, it's cold temperate. So it's actually very similar to Salmon Arm, BC. So similar microclimates in those areas, but really fascinating. The problem with the Kootenays is if you're not in the right aspect, if you're in a north aspect, you can't grow anything. Even in the summer, it's hard to grow stuff because it's too wet and too cold, and it just does. If you don't have that south aspect, you can't get warm, and so it can be a challenging climate. Whereas in Salmon Arm, up in the central BC interior, it's a big growing belt because the valleys are more wide open. It gets more light in the winter. And so it's cold temperate, just like Nelson, but the aspect of the valleys are so much better. And so I know I always find it interesting kind of looking at that stuff and thinking about conditions. And I've, lived in these areas, moved around these areas for so long. So yeah, thanks for calling in, brother. I'm thinking, Smith, I think we're gonna shut her down. I don't see any other recent super chats I want to jump on. So what are you saying? Should we close this puppy up?
Let's get the last word from Morgan, and go ahead and chime in, Morgan. I know you're new, so trying to be nice to you. I'm just kidding. I'm really glad you called in for a little radio show here. So unmute your mic and yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think it's unmuted. This is new to me, so yeah, there we go.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, just appreciate what you're doing, Curtis, and it's nice to be able to take part in an event like this that you're doing, and with all the stuff that's going on in the world, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. There's others out there thinking the same way I am, and yeah, it's just nice to hear feedback from all of you guys.
Likewise, brother, and thanks for calling in. And thanks everybody for showing up to the space. I think we peaked out. What did we get there tonight, Smith? At the 60 or so, maybe kind of the peak there.
Let's have a look. We're at 52. I think we never hit 60.
Okay,
But,
57 maybe it was.
And it was at 450. So pretty solid numbers all night.
Pretty cool. Really cool platform. And yeah, so folks, I'll be back with doing these on Wednesdays, same time, same place. So I'll be streaming both. And I'm trying to do more consistent now is the track starts about play music at the beginning, starts in the space 5 minutes or so before YouTube, and then when the stream comes up, we're in both places at once. So yeah, we'll leave it there tonight, folks. If you want to follow me more. If you're on YouTube, you want to follow me on X, it's at offgridstone. Freedomfarmers.com is the main platform where our courses are published, and our Homestead Accelerator program, which is just banging out right now. We're looking at properties in Kentucky have been just blowing my mind consistently. Talk about a place in the US where you can get crazy value. You look at a property in British Columbia for 5 times less the cost. You can get the equivalent in Kentucky and be close to Amish farmers too, which wouldn't be so bad to do, especially in the times that we're going. So check out freedomfarmers.com. And Smith, where can people follow you?
Whoa, don't forget also Rumble. Curtis Stone is on Rumble. Don't forget, excuse me. You can find me on here. I'm on other platforms, but this is where I hang my hat at Jimmy Leaf Tender. It's Purple Smith. I design, lead, and follow cults. Your mom loves my comedy and gardening spaces. X Purple. Spaces host. It's over 9,000 hours. Wordsmith, the island of misfit toys. You can click the link, but it'll just lead you back here because it's all on X. Thank you for listening. I'll hear you out there. And special thanks to Curtis Stone. Make sure to follow YouTube, Rumble, X, freedomfarmers.com. Click that link. Repost the space. It's recorded. It's a resource. Bookmark it. Comment. It's still there. We can use it. It's a thread. We're getting it done. Good night.
Right on, brother. And good night, folks. We'll see you in the next one.